This is Greg Pruitt, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, and you're listening to The Sports Fix.
You love sports, and you know a lot. Your friends keep telling you, you should totally start a podcast. Well, it's time you listened and checked out Spreaker.com. People just like you have made their dreams a reality at Spreaker.com. For example, Jerry J-Rocc Myers started a Cleveland sports show called The Sports Fix, and now he has thousands of listeners. J-Rocc rocks, and so do you. Start your own podcast today at Spreaker.com. It's easy and free. That's SPREAKER.com.
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from the Sports Fix, and we always talk about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at nosuchthingasabully.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Catch every UFC pay-per-view live in full HD at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Welcome in as we hit the button, click the mic. We are off and running. The Sports Fix. It's March 21st already. 3/4 of the way through the month of March. Hell, a quarter, of the way. Got to reverse that. Through this year already, but we're rocking and rolling, and March Madness is rocking and rolling. And was it mad or what? I'll tell you. I mean, nobody wants to hear the words brackets busted. Nobody even wants to talk about it. That was any conversation in the last 4 days that involved the NCAA tournament usually was followed with, I don't want to talk about it. My bracket's busted. I don't even want to talk about it. Hey, let's talk about the Cavs. Hey, let's talk about the Indians. It was one of those weekends. Hey, Michigan State. You know what? That was my fault. I did it again. I don't know why we don't figure out how to use the reverse jinx that comes when the Sports Fix guy endorses you on the radio show, but clearly that's a thing because we did it once again. When nothing but last week when I said, I don't know about all this bracket thing. I haven't done too well in the last few years, but I think Michigan State, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter what I said after Michigan State because as soon as those fateful words came out of my mouth, those dudes were toast. And they blew up not just my bracket, but a lot of people's brackets. And it just kept on going. I'll tell you what, this is by far the worst bracket I've ever put together. And I knew it was going to be coming in. I just knew it was going to be. It's been trending downwards the last few seasons. I think I may have done better had I just set the thing up in front of us and last week on the show just thrown darts and called out the winners. I think I may have gotten a better winning percentage as I checked in on the Sports Fix Tournament Challenge. Many of you guys got into it. There's actually I think a large number of guys got their brackets in before this thing started. I believe it was at least, I think it was about 3 dozen guys that got in with their brackets here before we ended the thing last week. But as I get ready to pull up the thing, I'm looking at mine. I got, 5, 6 Sweet 16 teams. That's horrible. That's the worst number of Final 16 teams that I have ever gotten when it comes to this thing. But anyways, I'm looking at the Sports Fix Challenge because I'd like to give some props. Many of you guys got into it, and some of you had great first weekends, unlike myself, unlike many of the people that are out here complaining like I am today. We have a 4-way tie for first place through the first weekend of the tournament in the Sports Fix Tournament Challenge. I see Charles Morgan, although Charles has a huge disadvantage. As a matter of fact, it would be nearly impossible for him to win because even though he is tied for first place with 440 points in the first round, out of a possible 560. He had Michigan State as well winning, so that blows up the majority of his potential in the future. But I see Mike Stryker, his bracket is on here. Evor Plus, and I don't know the real name, and 2113 C-Right are the three people that are currently leading the top of this thing with a couple of guys right underneath. And I still see a lot of people have winners alive. I see about half of our entries went with either Michigan State, Kentucky, or Arizona. All three of those teams bombed out of that thing in the first weekend. But I still see a lot of guys with, I see a couple of Virginias. I see a lot of North Carolina and Kansas guys predicting. So still a lot of people alive in this thing. At least I came up at the bottom. Started from the bottom. Now I'm in 28th place. I was dead last in the first day of this thing. So I'm down near the bottom. As long as I don't finish last, I'll be happy. Remember, whoever finishes first is going to win that Cleveland prize pack that's coming your way with a couple of great books by our friend Vince McKee. So I'll keep updating you guys on that. We're going to talk March Madness with Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland when Dan joins us here in a little bit. We've got a ton to get into. With the phones ringing, I'm going to open up the phones here in a moment because I want to at least spend a few minutes getting the pulse of you guys after the first weekend here. We've got NCAA tournament to talk. We're talking Indian spring training. Michael Brantley, Dr. Smooth, back on the field, baby. We're going to get into that. Speaking of baseball, off the field for the Chicago White Sox, Adam LaRoche, big story over the weekend. A lot of people chiming in opinions on families and kids in the locker room and a lot of things. There's a whole lot of things to get into about that story. I definitely want to get into it here on today's show. The Cleveland Browns entertaining RG3 over the weekend. We're going to get into some of that. Cavaliers go to Miami, and what happens when the Cavs usually go to Miami? LeBron yucks it up with Dwayne Wade. People get really mad about it. But on top of all that, the Cavs looked like poop in Miami. We're going to talk about all of that with you guys, with Dan Wismar. Tons of things to do. Let's do it. Rock and roll, lock and load. Welcome in to the Sports Fix, my friends, live across the Sports Fix Radio Network. I am your host, the conductor of the madness here. Each and every time we do this live, the Big Daddy on the microphone. J-Rocc, Jerry Myers with you here doing the thing. Whether you're listening, welcome in on, perhaps you're listening on TuneIn's radio app worldwide, mobile and digital. Perhaps you're on Spreaker, Mixler, their digital and mobile apps or their websites, all great places to enjoy the show anytime live or in digital delay. Welcome in live as well on our website. Many of you listen live on the sportsfix.net. If you haven't, bookmark it today. It's a great backup. If any of the places that you normally catch the show, if something's down, if there's technical difficulties, you can always jump right over to the sportsfix.net and have live feed right there of the show. No buttons needed. Go right to it. It beams from the heavens like manna coming down at you right there. The sportsfix.net. As well, speaking of digital delay, there are thousands of you guys each and every day who catch every episode around the world on sites 24/7, like iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, CarPlay, all of the different places that you guys download, feed, subscribe, podcast, however you do the thing, however you get your fix. I say it all the time. Thank you guys so much, because without you, I'm a cat with a microphone talking to myself. With you, this is that bad mamma jamma we call the Sports Fix, and I want you to be a part of the show. I've already got a call in the queue here. Phones are open. 216-539-7535 is the number to call. 216-539-7535. Remember, if you can't call live, or if you're not listening live, or perhaps you're listening live right on your phone, as so many people do, the modern conveniences of today, and you go, hey man, I can't call in live, you can call in anytime. The hotlines are open 24/7. 216-539-7535. Leave your take if we don't answer live. As well, if digital media and social media, that's your thing, hit us up, baby. We're with you. Facebook, Twitter, email, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter The Sports Fix, CLE, all one word, or at J-Rocc Daddy, JROCCDADDY, at The Sports Fix, CLE, all one word, at J-Rocc Daddy. You can email us, The Sports Fix, at AOL.com, Facebook.com/The Sports Fix, Twitter, at The Sports Fix, CLE, at J-Rocc Daddy, email, The Sports Fix, AOL.com. And I'll tell you guys, too, as we get going with this, don't forget to like and follow the pages. Over 25,000 social media followers, unique and strong on that. Join them. Stay linked up with us. All kinds of great articles from our friends at didthetryWinLastNight.com. Everybody hates Cleveland. All the different places that are part of the show in the background, all of their articles pumped through it. Great stuff. Cleveland news stuff, sports news coming your way 24/7 on Facebook, on Twitter. Check us out and follow us and like us today. I see my man Ron Graham on the Twitter, so make sure you tweet with him, baby. He'll be live tweeting along with the show at the Sports Fix CLE. I'm going to get into the phones. I'm going to go to the phones in just a second. We have got so much to get into in a limited amount of time this weekend. Busy weekend for me. Want to thank everybody that headed out to there was actually a packed house out there in Lorain, Ohio this past weekend. Wasn't sure if I was going to get back in the ring, and obviously we talked about last weekend getting banged up. Did do that and did well, felt well. Things went good. Some people were asking me how it went. Everything went well. Great stuff. Big crowd out there in Lorain. Thank you guys for coming out and checking things out and being a part of J-Rocc Daddy out on the road. Always a good time when I run into you guys, and I love seeing some of you guys say, hey, man, I was listening to this. I love it. I end up at my merchandise table talking more about the sports fix half the time and Cleveland sports. At least I don't have any. At least nobody else will ever come up to my gimmick table and go, hey, man, what you think about Johnny Manziel? At least I will never have to get that, at least about the Browns. Maybe I'll get that question about something else. But always one of my favorite things. I'm sitting there at the table and, hey, man, what do you think about LeBron? Hey, man, what do you think about the Cavs? What do you think about the Indians? And end up doing a mini talk show right over there at the merch table. But thank you guys for coming out. Between March Madness, just a crazy weekend this weekend. Speaking of crazy, goes from being beautiful on Friday. There's some snow coming down, trickling down here in the morning. This is Cleveland, by the way, as the weather goes back and forth. One thing I did get a chance to do late night, I got home late night, and you know, when I get done wrestling, I'm up all night, wired and fired up, and that was one of those nights, Saturday night. So I caught myself chasing down, after I caught up with all the basketball games, I found myself chasing down some, no bad pun intended, chasing Tyson. I found myself watching some documentaries, and I've seen it before, the 30 for 30, the ESPN does those great ones, man, and I watched the Chasing Tyson one, which I saw before. It was about Evander Holyfield and that long 5-year drama that it took to finally put the Tyson Holyfield fight into the ring. And I did enjoy it because it took me back to my heyday, I guess, as a boxing fan. This was like my teenage years when I was like, hot into boxing. To me, that was the last great era of boxing. I know Mayweather and De La Hoya had some big houses, but that whole era there. Anyways, see, Ron Graham's on the Twitter, by the way. Sorry to go all ADD on you, but he just tweeted out my comments about what's going to be about over at the old merchandise table. As I was getting back to Chase and Tyson, about Chase and Tyson, mentioned that here over the weekend. There are a couple of things that got me, though. If you've first off, they played skirt that Evander Holyfield is. He's definitely rumored to have done some substance abuse and some performance enhancing along the way to go from being a cruiserweight to a heavyweight and jump up as he did, and the heart problems that he had. But I did laugh at a couple of things. You know how documentaries are always slanted towards whatever side of the agenda the documentary maker is putting together. And we saw some of that with this one. First off, I love how they and hey, listen, as spiritual and believer in faith as the next guy. Everybody's got their religion, their creed that they follow, and in no way am I meaning to make light of that when I say it, but Evander Holyfield sold it on this thing like he walked into one of those Joel Osteen things, and the preacher put his hand on him. Now, this man was said to have a left ventricle. His heart was no good. He couldn't box. He was risking death if he ever boxed again, and they said, man, be healed, and put a hand on his chest, and this man was magically healed. I did get a kick out of that. But other than that, and the fact that they pretty much portrayed Mike Tyson as a big sissy, which anybody who lived through the Mike Tyson era knows that was not exactly the case. Now, granted, Mike Tyson was never the same after going to prison. Really never the same after losing Customato. I was talking to a buddy over the weekend about this, and I said, we both said, everybody knows that if Customato had stayed around, not only would Mike Tyson beat Evander Holyfield, he would have beat Lennox Lewis, he would have beat Riddick Bowe, he would have retired George Foreman's old self, he would have put everybody out of business if Customato had stayed around and Robin Givens and Don King didn't get hooked into Mike Tyson. But anyways, it was a decent documentary except for some of the slanted parts of it. But anyways, I got into that one over the weekend. That was a good one. Even better one, though, is Holmes and Ali. If you get a chance to watch that 30 for 30. Last week, we did a lot of talk about League of Denial and the concussion issues in sports. This is right there amongst that, talking about how in the world did any commission let Muhammad Ali step back in that ring when you realize, and I mean, man, there's footage of him training for this fight. He is clearly a diminished fighter, and that was a straight money grab, and those people should feel slimy. Well, they don't, but because obviously, especially at that time, boxing was a dirty business, and they did some dirt by Muhammad Ali for sure. But that one's powerful because you watch some of this footage and you go, there's no way in the world that anybody would clear this man to be out there. But so I caught up on a couple of those over the weekend, a couple of boxing documentaries that I highly recommend if you're doing the whole Netflix and chill thing, or even just Netflix by itself. Maybe you don't got the chill going on, but check those out. Ali Holmes and Chasing Tyson. I caught both of those over the weekend. In between some basketball, which I'm going to get to. Matter of fact, I'm going to stop yickety-yakking here. I've got a lot to do. Dan Wismar is going to join me. I want to talk to you first and foremost. Let me give you a chance to kick things off on the show. Caller, you are live. Welcome to the Sports Fix.
Yeah, good morning, J-Rocc.
Good morning. This is my man, Bruce. What's happening, baby?
Let me start with March Madness.
Start with March Madness. What do you got going on?
Okay, the greatest game I've seen over the weekend was Northern Iowa and the Aggies.
Northern Iowa and Texas, yes. I mean, we haven't even. I mean, upsets all through the weekend. But that one, and you know what? Of all the stuff that I got wrong, I think that was one of the ones that I actually had right on accident. I'm serious. I could have flipped coins and got a better bracket. But, man, how about that one? Because Northern Iowa had the big lead. Well, not big lead, but I think it was like 8 points or something like that.
12 points.
Or 12,
They had 12 points with 44 seconds to go.
But then, wait, no. Oh, you're talking about the second game where they lost. I'm talking about the first one where they advanced.
Oh, no.
No, how about the one where they advanced over Texas in the first round with the was
in
it
the
11,
last second shot?
Yeah, 11-6. Texas closes the 8-point gap, and they get that shot with 2.4 or 2.7 on the clock. And instead of calling the timeout, they inbound the ball, and that kid threw it up from half court, and that was the first real March Madness-y feeling shot of the weekend there on that one, even though there had already been a few upsets. But that one was great. But yes, how about the charge back? They get it on one end, and then I think Northern Iowa is officially both the luckiest and unluckiest, or whatever you want to say, team in the tournament, because they had that great story, and then, boy, did they have like an all-time collapse or what?
I mean, that was, I don't know, it was the biggest comeback in NCAA history.
12
with that
points.
Much, that less time on the clock.
44 seconds, bro. 12 points. That was unreal, man.
And then it went to double overtime.
Right. You know, I mean, that was, but the whole thing, I mean, I know you're not a Michigan State guy, but I mean, from setting the tone with Michigan State and the Spartans going down, which I want to say, I think ESPN, was it like 70%? It was a huge percentage. They were by far majority of people's selection to win this thing here this year, and they go down early, and it just kept going. Although not always the case, believe it or not, with all the upsets and the craziness, all 4 number 1 seeds have survived, and I believe according to Vegas, at least through the first 40 games. It got a little crazy after that. But 31 of the first 40 games, the betting favorite actually won, even though maybe by the seedings in the tournament it didn't look that way. But the 4 number 1s survived. But other than that, man, this thing was all Harry-Carry.
Well, I don't know what the exact stat is or was something, but that's the most double-digit teams I have seen make it to the second round. Being 10 or more.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Beating the higher seeds. I think it was like 5 or 6.
What do we have, a 15-10 matchup in the one bracket? Crazy ones. And I'm with you as you look around through the Sweet 16 matchups. I mean, some brackets played out pretty true to form. Like, got 1, 2, 5 came out of the South. So you had a pretty good bracket there as far as the South. But then things start to take a little bit crazy when you start in the bottom half of these. I mean, look at Gonzaga. And by the way, Gonzaga's one of my outliers, and I actually had Gonzaga going through. So how about that one? But you've got an 11-10 matchup in the second round. Other than that, though, 1, 2, 3, 4 comes through in the West, and 1 and 4 come through in the top part of the opposite of the 11-10. 1, 5, 6, and 7. So you had a lot of the higher seeds for all the talk of upsets. It really was. Some of the stronger teams have come through. It really does set you up for some really interesting. I mean, you got North Carolina and Indiana. You had Indiana and Kentucky. Used to be such a blue blood matchup. You had that one there in the round of 32. Kansas and Maryland, Miami and Villanova. There's some good Sweet 16 games set up after this. Notre Dame and Wisconsin's a pretty evenly matched one over there. You head down to the bottom brackets, Virginia, Iowa State, Oregon, and Duke. And Duke, by the way, I had Duke going down in the first round of the tournament, and they were so close. And they almost, and then even the Yaleys almost went out there and took A&M and Oklahoma. Really the only crazy one when you get to the Sweet 16 is Gonzaga and Syracuse. So really all the double-digit teams that won early just kind of played in the favor of the higher-seeded teams in the round of 32 who ended up advancing to the Sweet 16.
Right. My second thing is the Browns and RG3. You got any idea what they're trying to do, or
did you just
resurrect his career, or trying to get him killed, or?
Well, no. I mean, I know you don't like the Browns, but I mean, I don't really. To me, there's nothing about. I mean, look, nobody kidnapped the guy and made him come to Cleveland. If he wants to come here and play, he wants to come here and play. Listen, Bruce, the Browns are wiping the decks and building back up. I understand your feeling about them now, but that has nothing to do with that aspect of the conversation. I'm not a big fan of RG3. That being said, somebody needs to play quarterback for the Browns next year. I actually don't like the guys. I've made this clear. I don't like anybody at the top of the draft. If you're not going to take a guy at the top of the draft, then you do got to sign a decent quarterback that can get you through a season until you get back to the draft again next year. I think the Browns know that if they would rather get a quarterback second, third, later in this one, or come back next year, I just think that's a better option. I would rather, if you gave me my choice of taking one of these quarterbacks number 2 or taking RG3 for a year, maybe 2, and then drafting Joey Bosa or whoever you want the Browns to take at number 2 and at the top of the second round. I'd rather they do that, come back to quarterback later in the draft, get Cardell Jones, or come back to quarterback next year, take a shot at a developmental guy, build the freaking team. I'm just saying, man, you'll eventually find a quarterback, but why start there if it's not there? Like, if it's there, fine. If it's a no-brainer, if Andrew Luck's waiting for you, fine. But there's so much. To me, it's like what they say. When you got multiple quarterbacks, you don't have any. When you've got multiple number ones, you have none. Same thing there. To me, if it's that much of a, well, you can take this guy, you can take that, then there is no consensus. And in that case, take the best player available.
Right, and that would be Bosa.
I think so. Or whoever your guy is, you know?
Yeah, I'd like to see Bosa come here. I mean,
I'm with you there. I'm with you there, brother.
As a quarterback, or I'd go with Bosa. But
I'm with you there.
You never know what they're going to do.
All right. So what are your thoughts on RG3? I'm making Browns jokes and all of that, but let's get past that. What do you think? Gas in the tank left for him, and would you like to see it? I think. Look, since I like Hugh Jackson, and he was a guy. I do feel that the Browns got a quarterback that they can appreciate as far as they are not a quarterback, excuse me, coach that wasn't 4th, 5th, 6th on the list. This was at least the guy that they wanted, and they got him. So I like Hugh. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. That's a guy that he thinks he can work with. I do like the fact that they're not hung up on anything. Like the Kaepernick thing, which I wasn't big on, didn't pan out. Move on. Move to the next guy. And I wouldn't be surprised from what I'm hearing if something's going to happen with RG3, it may happen in the next couple of days when the owner meetings and stuff, and it gives you an opportunity to make a deal happen because you've got all the key players that you need right there. So I wouldn't be surprised because that decision is going to give the clue for where the Browns are going. I mean, really, you're going to find out whether they're going quarterback early. I mean, they're going to go there in some direction, but you're not going there with number 2 if you make a drop on a guy like RG3 now. So that's just my take. But what do you think?
I agree with that. I agree. Take one in the lower rounds. I mean, some of the best quarterbacks have been taken in lower rounds, so, you never know.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me skip to the Tribe.
All right, let's do it, baby.
Have you checked out the starting lineup for today?
No. I am happy to see that Michael Brantley's in the lineups, period. I mean, when I was telling guys before spring that I had a feeling in my gut, just some of the things I was hearing, I said, man, I don't know if he's coming back for opening day, but he'll be back before May. I remember saying that, and he'll be back for opening day. My man is playing baseball. But no, I haven't seen today's lineup.
Yeah, I almost jumped out of my chair when he hit the home run the other night. I mean, I thought his arm was, falling off, a couple months ago, and now all of a sudden he's, back to normal.
Right.
Actually hitting better. But, no, we have a lineup today that almost looks like the opening day lineup. Kipnis, Lindor, Brantley batting third, Napoli, Gomes, Bird. Uribe, they're playing the third, and Bernabel is the DH. I think Santana will be the opening day DH. And then Naquin is the center fielder. I think that's pretty close to an opening day lineup.
We're getting there. What are we, 14 days away today? 2 weeks exactly?
14 days.
Damn right, baby.
Yeah,
all right, Bruce.
I can't wait.
Me too. I
And,
know you can't.
Carrasco's pitching today. Just happens to be his birthday.
Yeah, getting it going on his birthday. Happy birthday to him. Hey, I've got to let you go because I've got Dan coming, but I wanted to ask you, not right, but baseball thing, because I'm going to go in that direction here in a moment anyway. The White Sox, all this over the weekend. Adam LaRoche has to retire, or chooses to retire. His son was with him. It was part of the deal that he made with the White Sox to come to them was, hey, last few years of my career, my son's at this age, I want to spend some time with him. He's going to travel, blah, blah, blah. Team agreed. He could be with the team and all that. And apparently it was a problem to the team last season because this year they waited until spring training. They told the guy, hey, this has got to change. And basically he said, well, the hell with that. If I'm choosing between spending the summer with my son or with you, I'm going to spend it with my son. And he retired, gave up $14 million. Take a hike and tell to kick it to the curb. What do you think?
Yeah, but he also said, don't worry about me. I got $81 million in the bank.
Exactly.
So, it's not like, he's losing any money. I mean, the $13 million is $13 million, don't get me wrong, but no, I totally agree with him. There's been other players that have taken their son for the summer. Bonds, Griffey, both of them come to mind. They spent the summer with their dad, and they turned out all right.
I agree with you. I do have some. I mean, hey, I do also agree with a lot of people that think, well, J-Rocc, you can't take a kid to work every day. Maybe you take a kid to work, sometimes here and there. But that being said, we're not exactly going to work either. But we're going to get that in a minute. I want to talk to Dan and get his thoughts. But I was just curious what you thought about that. Bruce, my man, I got to go.
All righty. I'll talk to you later, J-Rocc.
All right. That's my man, Bruce. And I apologize. I don't know what's going on. I think we may be having some technical difficulties. If any of you are having any difficulty losing audio on the show, do me a favor. Hit me up and let me know. I had a couple of glitches here. Hopefully things are back on. We're going to take a break, come right back on the other side of it, and pick up with that. I want to talk Adam LaRoche. We'll talk Tribe, March Madness, Cavs, Brown. Look, man, we're just getting going, baby. And it picks up next when Dan Wismar joins from Everybody Hates Cleveland. We'll get my man here in on the conversation after we pick up with the news and so much more. Keep your phone calls coming in on the phone, and we'll take your off the and play them. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Dan Wismar is next after the news here on the Sports Fix.
The Sports Fix, your choice for intelligent talk.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Intelligent talk.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though.
It could have been a lot better.
I didn't really like it.
These guys must be on the wrong station.
It was pretty terrible.
It was bad.
It was awful.
It was terrible.
Get them away!
Hey, boo!
Boo!
The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
There's heritage, and then there's birthright, the passing down of important things. We're talking about something deeper than nostalgia. We are proud. The C is for Cleveland and courage and comeback. No matter who we are before, when we put it on, we stand on season. It's about unfinished business. Get ready. Here comes the tribe.
Little stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip.
This is WWE Superstar. Have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Visit Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Like us on .com/The Sports Fix. You put into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy time spent making real decisions, creating fans. Harry Buffalo North Olmsted is the home for every UFC pay-per-view live on the big screens.
Let's get it all!
And let's not forget their mouth-watering trademark, the Bison Burger.
They sure are good.
Nobody does bison like Harry Buffalo. The perfect combination of healthy and delicious.
Hey there, eat up, y'all. You's as good church-going folk. Y'all deserve a little treat.
What are you waiting for? Get to Harry Buffalo, just outside Great Northern Mall today. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd. Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit fantasyjocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
News break.
I'm Christine Lisi, developing story. Ben Simmons ready to leave LSU behind for the NBA. The Tigers freshman told ESPN he's making it official, will hire an agent and declare for the NBA draft. Simmons entered the season as the top freshman in the country, was the only player to average more than 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists a game. LSU, a disappointing 19-4 this season, missed the NCAA tournament and said no to an invitation to play in the NIT. Simmons is expected to go first or second overall in the June 23rd draft, in the opinion of numerous NBA executives. Irresponsible and offensive is how the International Tennis Federation is describing via a statement the remarks of Indian Wells tournament director Ray Moore. He said that women players ride the coattails of their male counterparts. Moore has apologized for his remarks. NFL Browns executive Sashi Brown shooting down all the talk that the team's actively pursuing a trade with the 49ers for quarterback Colin Kaepernick. Only 17 brackets entered in ESPN's NCAA Tournament Challenge got all Sweet 16 teams correct. 6 entries tied atop the leaderboard with 590 total points.
Sports Center is brought to you by Werner. If you haven't tried a Werner podium yet, you don't know what you're missing. It's a new style of ladder that lets you work or cut down the nets facing any direction. Find the perfect podium for you. Go to.
Hey everybody, this is Jerry the King Lawler from WWE, and you're
Yeah. You know how we do it. West side, coming from the west side. We hitting on the west side.
Welcome back into this front side thing. Come back. Let's try this again. J-Rocc back with you here. And Wismar me here on the apologize for the intermittent audio today. We've had some technical difficulties. Do the best we can to clean it up, and we're going to go right now to the phone lines. You guys keep the conversations rolling on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Twitter at The Sports Fix, CLE. Email The Sports Fix at AOL.com. Can't use the phones because that's what Dan Wismar is doing. And Dan from EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. Dan, how you doing today?
Doing great, J-Rocc. Good to be back with you. Crazy March weekend, wasn't it?
Oh, my goodness. Crazy first weekend of March Madness, man. I don't know where you want to start, man. You want to start with the brackets? Because mine don't exist, but that's par for the course.
Mine blew up early because I had the Spartans winning it, and I had West Virginia coming out pretty far. Both those guys went down. So the whole right half of my bracket is sort of in the shredder. Actually, I didn't do bad the first day, 14 out of 16 on Thursday, but then I took a little bit of a hit Friday. But nobody. The most boring thing is to hear other people talk about their NCAA brackets. But so crazy games. You and I thought had obviously the high and the low, as you were talking about with Bruce. The big high with the incredible last second win, and of course, 2 minutes after the kid hits the shot for UNI over Texas on Thursday, or Friday night rather. They had the shot, the dunk by Cincinnati that would have tied the game, that is ruled no good. Would have sent that game to overtime, and said Cincinnati loses on a guy who the ball was actually down past the rim, but the guy still had his hands on it, and so they ruled it out. If he just floats that ball up there and puts it in, it's an overtime game. Instead, he went for the dunk, and because his hands were still on the ball, it ruled it out. Those two finishes were within 2 or 3 minutes of each other, and I'm just scratching my head going crazy. And then I had UNI coming out over Texas A&M, and I'd already circled them on my bracket when they're up 12 with 40-some seconds to go, and that was just the most incredible collapse. You can't even call it a comeback by Texas A&M. You got to call it a collapse by Northern Iowa, because they turned the ball over 4 times. Not only usually if you're going to come back in a game like that, you're going to have to foul. Texas A&M didn't commit a foul in the last 40-some seconds. And
right.
The thing that was crazy to me was if he's thinking, and of course hindsight's 20/20, and you can always think about what he should have done. But when the little point guard inbounds the ball, 11 seconds to go, and he's got it, and they're trapping him in the corner, and he can't get out of it. They don't have a timeout left. All he's got to do is wing the ball down to the other end of the court, or frankly, just throw it straight up in the air, as high as he can. Because the clock keeps running while the ball's in the air, and if he just baseball passes it, or hook shot kind of flings it down to the other end of the court, even if it goes out of bounds at the other end of the court, A&M's inbounding it with a second to go from the opposite end. You think about those things after the fact, or what should have happened, or what he should have done, and obviously the heat of the moment, it's a whole different ball game. But just so many incredible endings. It's every bit as good as it's ever been. The storylines to me coming out are 6 ACC teams in the Sweet 16, the most ever from a conference. And really, if you look at Maryland in the Big Ten, it's, could have been 7 if Maryland doesn't join the Big Ten a couple of years ago.
Right.
It really is an amazing performance there. 3 Big Ten teams, and of course, you never would have guessed that if the Big Ten had 3 teams in there, that Michigan State wouldn't be one of them, and neither would Purdue. Those were obviously 2 of the stronger Big Ten teams are both gone. But anyway, just compelling basketball. I was glued to it. I didn't accomplish a damn thing over the weekend other than watch basketball.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. You talked the ACC and the Big Ten. How about the Pac-12? They lost, 5 opening round teams, and then 6. They lost. What did they lose?
Right.
Colorado.
Yeah, and their number 1 seed, Oregon's the only team.
Right. All they've got is Oregon. Yeah, the big one, but everybody else wiped out in that one there, man. And
right. And of course, the SEC is terrible too. And in fact, Texas A&M, the only SEC team left, and them by the skin of their teeth. And again, that's a recent arrival to the SEC. So they just they lived up to their reputation as a crappy basketball conference.
You got that right, man. And as you sit here, I was talking in the opening segment. Thank you for those of you guys joining us, by the way, and jumping in here. Dan Wismar and I talking a little bit about the tournament and the hell with the blown up brackets. But I think some of it, you had some big ticket ones that went obviously up at the top. But when you take those couple out, and I think maybe what busted a lot of people up is the fact that now nobody just picks the games. Everybody tries to pick the upsets. Everybody tries to find nobody just picks who they think are going to win these games anymore. They're always looking to be that person that picks those things, because when you look at it now, as I was going through the seeds, I mean, you've got that kind of outlayer of a double-digit matchup in the Sweet 16 there. But other than that, I mean, you've got most of the teams that, according to the seeding, people figured would be there. You wouldn't think that, the way everybody's talking about what a crazy first 4 days it was. But you look around and you see the 1s, you see the 3s, the 4s, the 5s. You see a lot of the upper crust seeds here, and you go, wait a minute, actually it played more true to form than people think it did, even though the big surprises make you think that it didn't. Am I wrong? But I mean, look, like,
no, you're not wrong at all. In fact, you've got there's only 4 teams that are lower than a 5.
Right.
And in fact, and Syracuse and Gonzaga, the 11 and 12 are playing each other, and then the other team, a 6 and a 7,
that's it.
Wisconsin, Notre Dame, are playing each other as well. So 2 of those 4 teams that are lower than 5 seeds are going to be out in the next game. So, you're right. Everybody else is a top 5 seed.
And here's what's funny. Next year, everybody follows the trends, Dan. So next year, everybody's brackets will get busted because they go chalk next year. And everybody's going to pick all the top seeds. And then when the upsets happen, it'll be, now the world went upside down because everybody overcorrects from one year to the next. So that'll be the trend next year will be, the top seeds.
Exactly. Yeah, now it was fun to watch Arkansas, Little Rock, and Middle Tennessee and UNI.
Middle Tennessee, brother.
And Yale, of course. The big upset of the first day was Yale over Baylor. But, and those guys typically, when you win one game, I think something like I've heard there's only 3 14 seeds that have ever won a second game. Cleveland State obviously being one of them. They came out in Sweet 16 in '86. But, that was interesting to me to hear that. And it's just, sometimes it gets a little heady, and you haven't been there before. And frankly, superior talent will win out, maybe not in one game, but usually in 2.
Yeah, for sure, and you see that as these things play themselves out. Middle Tennessee, you brought them. How about Duke, by the way? I that's the one I didn't get. Always talking about guys trying to outsmart it. I did too. I had Duke. I picked them to be upset in the first round of the tournament this year, and that's the one I don't get, of course. And they they had 2 tough ones to get through their first 2 games of the weekend here.
Yeah, they did, and they are matched up against Miami. Am I right now? I think in the
as I pull up the brackets here,
I like Miami as kind of a sleeper, but I actually
no, they've got Oregon. No, it's Duke and Oregon, right. Miami and Villanova. Yeah,
there you go. My only hope is for Oregon, or it's for Oklahoma and Villanova to keep on going. But in any event, that's. Duke did have a couple of struggles, but they had been playing very well at the end of the year, and obviously, when tournament time comes around, when in doubt, bet on the coaches, the great coaches. That didn't work with the Tom Izzo.
I was going to say, that didn't work for me.
As a general rule, you're going to go with the coach and the teams that have been there, and that would be Duke certainly would be in that category.
Looking around, as I mentioned, there's some, especially just name wise, some of the storied programs. But you look at the Sweet 16 matchups. You got North Carolina, Indiana. To me, that's right up there. Hey, how about getting a Kentucky and Indiana matchup there in the second round? But North Carolina, Indiana. I think Kansas and Maryland, Miami, Villanova. We just mentioned that one there. Notre Dame, Wisconsin. Virginia, Iowa State, Oregon, Duke that we talked about, A&M and Oklahoma, and then Gonzaga and Syracuse, which I'm telling you now, I should have went with my gut because I took Gonzaga through to Michigan State, and then I had them losing in the Sweet 16 to Michigan State. But original bracket that I filled out and then made a few changes, I had Gonzaga going to the Final Four as my crazy Final Four team, and don't bet against them doing it because it looks like that may be possible. I think that they can get through their Sweet 16 matchup, and then from there, obviously, it depends on whether you got Virginia, whether you've got Iowa State on the other side of that bracket. But it's very conceivable Gonzaga's in the Final Four next weekend.
Yeah, you're right. I was very impressed with them in their first game, and I, like you, had them coming out to the Sweet 16 more. And I won't even call it an educated guess because I hadn't seen them play very much this year. But when I saw the kid Sabonis in their opening round game, and is that Arvydas Sabonis' kid?
I believe so, yes. Yes.
I wasn't sure about that, but he's a big guy, he's a center, obviously, and I thought that must be. I guess it's not an uncommon Russian name, but in any event, he's very impressive. In fact, as you look at the whole sport of college basketball, and you can see everybody's throwing threes these days, and hardly anybody in this tournament is pounding the ball down into the paint to a big man. Purdue does that to a certain degree, and they're out of it. But of all the teams that remain, Gonzaga, more than anybody else, works the ball in. They want to get the ball into Sabonis, and they've got another big man, 33, I can't think of his name, who's another big guy who he can shoot the three, as can Sabonis, but they want to pound it down inside, and they're conspicuous because they're unique in that respect. I don't see really any other team in this tournament that works the ball down low as much as they do, and it just sort of points out to you how much the college game has changed because everybody else is running high screens and trying to free guys up to take 3-pointers, and Gonzaga has really a punishing inside game that really has been effective so far.
Tell you what, too, talking about Gonzaga with that victory over Utah, did you see the list that they put out over the weekend? It wasn't one of the largest gaps in NCAA tournament history of teams getting the victory there in the second round. When there's a gap of 5 seeds or more, there's only been a handful of big upsets at that one, and Gonzaga and Utah was one of those, with that being an 11 and a 3 seed, right up there with Navy and LSU back in '85, and a couple of the other ones there throughout the early rounds of the tournament. But anyways, I thought that was pretty interesting because if they win, they'll be facing the exact same situation, and then if they do make that Final Four run that I just called, they will have 2 of the 5 biggest gaps between seeds wins on the list in the same tournament run, beating another team that's a half a dozen seeds or more higher than they are.
Yeah, interesting. And by the way, kind of off that topic, with Gonzaga playing Syracuse the next round, I missed something, but what is the story with Syracuse and Boeheim and the suspension? Is he not allowed to coach, or I thought his team was, ruled ineligible for postseason play? Syracuse. What happened with that? Are you on top of that?
No, you got the wrong guy, man. No.
Okay, I thought that Boeheim was being punished for something or other,
and I did too. You're right. Yeah,
and that his team was going to be ineligible to compete, and I just haven't looked into it or read enough about it to understand. I thought maybe you might know.
What was that last?
Anyway, I was thinking, what's Syracuse doing in the tournament? But either it was last year, who knows? But maybe just Boeheim alone is being suspended from the tournament, not his team. But I don't know.
I don't know, but I don't think they're gonna. I think they're gonna be suspended from the tournament come Friday when they play in Chicago, because I've got Gonzaga taking that one and going through.
And it might be a moot point.
And you know what? Real quick on the Gonzaga deal there. And by the way, they didn't just win; they blew them out. It was the third biggest blowout by a seed that much higher than the other one, by winning by 23 points, which was the other part of that stat that I was bringing up before.
And that game really snowballed right at the end. That was a very close game.
Do you know
right up until probably the last 5, 6, 7 minutes?
Do you know that Gonzaga has now reached the Sweet 16 as a double digit in the seeding 4 times? No other team in the history of the tournament has ever made the second weekend as a double-digit seed more than twice. I mean, Gonzaga just makes a history.
And you'd think the people that see the tournament would finally get.
They figure that out. I think they do it on purpose, though. It's like
figure it out. Yeah.
It's like those guys that used to seed Butler low because they knew that Butler was good for a win or two in the first rounds of the tournaments. They know what they're doing when they put those schools there. And I'll tell you, it just adds more to some of these schools that got left out at the very clip edge of it. They go, look at these small schools, man. We could be doing this. And by the way, as we watched another 15-2, I remember that was the first time I ever saw that was when Arizona went down when I was a kid. I think that may have been the first 15-2 upset ever, was when Arizona went down. Would have been like what, 90, 94, 93, something like that. But
anyway, happened 8 times now. This was the 8th time it had happened. In the first round, and
how long?
It's actually happened 4 of those 8 times have been in the last 4 years.
Right, it's coming.
2012 to present, so it's becoming more common, and that's why a lot of people think that the parity in the sport will eventually have a number 1 lose to a 16.
That's where I was going.
Happened yet?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you, Dan.
Yeah, those 2s and 15s have happened 8 times ever. But 4 of them since 2012.
I mean, think about it. One of these years, and you got to think it's coming soon. If we're now to the point where
I think it just may, because let's face it, the difference between that Middle Tennessee team, obviously, and Michigan State, just in terms of guys that can put the ball in the hoop, and are obviously energized, they're excited to be there. You could tell on some of those upsets. I mean, Middle Tennessee was one of them. Arkansas LaRoche beating Purdue was another one.
Yes. Oh, God, yeah.
You could
Purdue.
see that the underdog, they just wanted it more. They played harder, and that's always, I think, going to be the case with the serious underdog, 14, 15, 16 seeds. They're the Hoosiers, man. They're out there, giving everything they've got and putting on a show, and they're just pumped up. Our Little Rock just wanted that game over Purdue more, and I think the same was true with the Michigan State game. That Spartans felt, wow, come the end of this game, we'll be able to turn it on and win it. Well, no, you can't.
Don't. We're going to get to the Cavs in a moment while we're talking about turning the water faucet on and off. But, right there, it's not even, to me, when's the year that the miracle upset's going to happen. Like, look at this. Middle Tennessee State, if in the process of seeding they end up getting bumped down to a 16 instead of a 15, then we're talking about it now, because that team came ready to play, and they did it. And you just got to think that year is coming, and I think it's going to be next year, man. I really do, where that matchup will happen, because clearly you're right there. And I just
and I was watching that Middle Tennessee game, and they went out 15-2 over the Spartans. And never trailed in the game. Michigan State got within 2 times, I believe, when they were up in the 70s in score. But Michigan State never led that entire game, and it was wire to wire. So this was not some fluky thing. This was a team that outplayed them for 40 minutes, and that made it, I'm sure, all the sweeter.
Dan Wismar, we're getting ready to cross over into the top of the hour. Dan Wismar talking with me here. We're doing a little March Madness now. The Sweet 16 is set, and it'll be interesting. By the way, look at talking about the big teams and the big brands. 6 of the 10 most winning programs in college basketball history in this Sweet 16. It's definitely one of the more big brand school heavy Sweet 16s that we've had in a while.
Yeah, that's true. And of course, missing Kentucky and Michigan State, 2 of the teams that recently have been dominant in college basketball. But you've still got, the cream rising to the top, you might say. And that just makes for a real compelling weekend next weekend and obviously going forward.
And how about coaching? It's always talked about how important it is in college hoops compared to and by the way, Calipari I guess we got to what am I going to do? I got to start all over again. Hey, you asked for this when you recruit the team du jour of the season and then go. But I mean, to me, by the way, is that not a guy who eventually is going to have to answer the question of how you can do so little with so much talent? But that's another story. I mean, those teams are loaded, and I mean, they should be winning, Final Fours and championship after championship. Instead, they're just big collections of talent that do some things, don't finish the job. Anyways, but part
of it, Jerry, let's just face it, part of it is, what do they always say about, the keys to winning in the NCAA tournament? Leadership, senior players,
senior leadership is huge.
If you never have any seniors on your team, like Calipari,
exactly.
If you're recruiting one and dones, and then you've always got a young team. Sometimes you've got so much talent, like last year with Cauley Stein and Towns and these kids that were just so dominant and so good as freshmen that you're just going to steamroll people anyway. But once in a while, the one and done recruiting philosophy will come up and bite you, and that's what happened this year. I think you just didn't have enough seasoned players that had been there before and knew what was going on.
And getting back to coaching and going there, 8 of the 16 coaches left have all made Final Fours. I mean, obviously the Don, you've got Coach K and Mike Krzyzewski. He's got 12 in his arsenal, but you got Roy Williams at North Carolina has been to 7. You mentioned Syracuse and Jim Boeheim. He's got 4. Bill Self at Kansas has been to a pair, and then you've got a Final Four each for Tom Crean at Indiana, Lon Kruger at Oklahoma, Larinaga at Miami, and Jay Wright at Villanova. So half of the Sweet 16 have all made at least one Final Four. So you've got some top shelf coaching in this Sweet 16 round as well.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's just another example of coaches and great guard play and making free throws, that sort of thing, and all those truisms that year after year just play out in the tournament. Those are the big keys to getting there, and I guess getting there consistently.
I'll tell you, we talk about defense a lot. This was a stat that I saw that was a little bit off. For all the talk of how defense wins championships, 10 of the 12 most efficient offenses in college basketball this season are part of the 16 teams that are remaining. So, meanwhile, on the opposite side of the 16 teams remaining, there's only 6 of the top 12 defenses in the country. So, at least of the teams that made it through the first weekend, the more powerful offensive teams have seemed to be the trend this year.
Yeah, interesting. Had one real defensive struggle last night. That would have been the Wisconsin Xavier game. And by the way, it's going to be hard to beat for the next 20 years. It's going to be hard to beat that half-court buzzer beater for Northern Iowa. But Kiffin, Wisconsin hit 2 threes in the last 13 seconds last night, 1 to tie it, 1 to win it. And they'll be remembering that one up in Wisconsin for a long time.
You got that right. Dan Wismar, J-Rocc, doing the thing, top of the hour. Welcome into the Sports Fix if you're just joining us here as we roll on. And by the way, we've cleared it up now, but getting all kinds of technical difficulty from Mixler. So unfortunately, we had to take care of that. But now we're working and we're jamming, and Dan's with us. You guys keep the conversation rolling as we cross over. Talking to us on Twitter and email and Facebook, all the social media, facebook.com/The Sports Fix, Twitter @The Sports Fix, CLE, email thesportsfix@AOL.com. And Dan, now as we kind of move on past March Madness, everybody's brackets are busted. We get it. We'll see some good basketball coming up this weekend. Where do you want to go? Because there are so many different places that we can go.
Let's do the LaRoche thing because I've got that, up on my screen here. And
oh, I know you do. You texted me this morning and said, "Hey, we going to talk about this?" Yes, we are.
It's just something that you got to talk about.
Absolutely. Where are you at on this, by the way?
You've got a young son, a teenage son. I've raised a son. Everybody, a lot of fathers can relate to this, and of course, the LaRoche family. We've got a little Cleveland history. Dave LaRoche, the Adams' father, played for the Cleveland Indians, and was sort of a guy when I was a kid. He was pitching for the Tribe. Here's my thing, Jerry. I mean, the guy. The great quote from LaRoche from a couple of years ago in an interview, and this has been going on for a while. We're not big on school. That's the quote that stands out to me. LaRoche said he doesn't think he thinks his kids can get a better education in a Major League Baseball clubhouse than he can in a school. The kid goes to school basically half the year. Last year, he accompanied his father during the baseball season. Now, I don't know how much he was in the dugout, how much he was in the clubhouse, whether it was every day. But basically, it seems to me the players on the White Sox are sick of it. And frankly, I don't blame them. You've got, Will Leitcher, has an article this morning on it, and I sort of relate to that. And apparently the players on the team were ready to boycott a game, were ready to sit out. Chris Sale's name came up. Some of the players are basically saying, hey, enough of having a 14-year-old around. As if a Major League Baseball clubhouse, as Will Leitch puts it, 25 cocksure 25-year-olds running around. What do they do in the clubhouse day to day? They burp, they fart, they tell dirty jokes. It's not necessarily the greatest place for a 14-year-old to be. You've been in clubhouses and you've been in locker rooms and, 25 adult men. Maybe not the greatest place for your 14-year-old to get a quote-unquote education. So I relate to the clubhouse ownership. And by the way, the club ownership, General Manager Williams, did not say the kid's not allowed in anymore. He just said he's not allowed to be here 100% of the time. I don't want him here every single day. And responding to what his players were telling him. Hey, this 14-year, I always was taught that when you have something that you're trying to decide whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whether it's an ethical thing or an unethical thing. It can be from jaywalking to throwing your ashtray out your car window to cheating on your taxes, whatever it might be. You ask yourself, if everybody did what I'm doing, would it still be okay? Would it be great if all 25 players had their 14-year-old kid in the clubhouse every day? No, of course it would. So why is it right for one guy to have his kid in the clubhouse every day, regardless of how important he thinks school is or how much, positive effect his kid gets out of going to school, like 99.99% of the rest of the kids. So that's me. I'm 100% in the camp of the club management who said, hey, enough.
All right, Dan. Let's talk about this because first off, I can see both sides of this 100% clear. Especially, I'm used to. I've got children, and I'm used to being in locker rooms, so I kind of get all of this. But now maybe you and I are misinterpreting. I must have because when I was looking into all this, see the whole thing, and I must have misinterpreted because when I read about the players and heard some quotes about them the next day, I thought that the boycott and Chris Sale was specifically talking about how they had to get talked into going to the next game. That was after I thought that was after the fact, and that was in support of LaRoche against Kenny Williams. See, because from what I hear is a lot of it is the opposite. Now, yes, there was some complaints, and that was where the initial we need to talk about your son being in the locker room came from. But everything I'm hearing coming out of the majority of the locker room there is in support of the player and against the general manager, because while I totally get the point and I'm 100% in agreement with the fact that in a normal set of circumstances, this would maybe not be the ideal thing when you go under the the assumption, and this is just what's been put out there, that this was discussed and agreed upon before the contract was signed, and that that this was something that was known ahead of time. Now the White Sox and Kenny Williams are saying we didn't know it was going to be to this extent, but I guess I got to start with one of us is misinterpreting what we're reading, because you took it as...
Right. You're probably right that quite possibly that was a reaction. And I didn't mean to single out Chris Sale. But,
because that's exactly what he said, but I thought he was...
And it's very easy after the fact to say, hey, this isn't all that bad. We don't mind having the kid around. There's been lots of reactions here, and I saw one from a fan, a White Sox fan, who basically said, hey, LaRoche, go, retire, because you suck. Because
you know what?
You just hit
something, Dan.
Drain on our salary.
But you just hit something, and I think LaRoche said a comment like that on his way out the door over the weekend. It wasn't an issue before last season, but somehow after my play, perhaps it became more of an issue. I think he's well aware of the fact that this may have been a way to move towards the end of a situation that the White Sox may have been wanting to move towards anyway.
Well, let's face it, this was a decision that LaRoche made, not something that the White Sox made. In other words, all he has to do is stay and play, and they're contractually obligated to pay him his $13 million. Now, you can applaud the guy wanting to spend a lot of quality time with his son. Obviously, that's unassailable. But at the same time, and hey, $81 million in the bank. It's a very good reason to say, hey, you only go around once, and the kid's only 14 once, and I'm going to spend my summer with him. Spend it in your vacation home in Aruba for all I care. But it's an imposition on the team and on your fellow players and on everybody to have the kid around underfoot in the dugout in the clubhouse every single day. If everybody did it, it would be chaos and nobody would like it.
But I have seen it done on many occasions before, where a player has been asked to come back or negotiated with or whatever and said, hey, this is the deal. And I have seen people take their children for the entire season, obviously in individual cases. And that's, to me, that's where I draw the distinction, is if the man said, hey, look, I'm willing to play, but my son is 13, 14 years old. I to be honest with you, I'm willing to sit at home and enjoy his teenage years. However, maybe we can reach a compromise. If I can take him on the road with us, if I can have him with me and spend my days with him and they said okay, that's where I think the White Sox, that's different. And of course, none of us are going to ever know exactly what the he said, she said details of it are, but. Because it's so funny.
Yeah,
we're talking about the different stories. You hear one story that says players up in arms. You hear another that says the majority of the locker room had no problem with it, and it was 2 or 3 guys that were very vocally against it. So there's so many different stories in play there that it really throws it up. But it's easy to use big money figures and say, well, and again, you're getting paid a lot of money. I mean, who am I to stick up for somebody that made $81 million? I'm not feeling bad for him, but if that's the deal, that's the deal, I mean, hey, if you said, hey, we want Barry Bonds to come back, and he says, well, I got to bring my dog with me, and they agree, well, then we got to deal with the dog in the clubhouse, because that's the deal that was made to get him to play. So, you can see both sides of it, and I agree.
Yeah.
Hey, I can't take my son to work.
Both sides too. But the one thing that this Will Leach piece, leads me to believe is that not only is this about quality time with Dad, but this is a guy who's really down on the schools and on the education process.
He's got a tutor on the road.
Truly believes that his son will get a better education. Lee said, hey, he isn't just saying he wants to spend time with his son. He's saying a baseball clubhouse is a better place for his son than school. And I'm sorry, that's one of the most absurd things I've ever heard, is that quoting the Will Leach column this morning. So, I agree with that. I mean, the kid belongs in school, and he doesn't get a better education hanging out with 25 jockstraps snapping Major League Baseball players in a baseball clubhouse for 162 games.
I agree with you there as far as the atmosphere, but he is homeschooled. He does have private tutors that travel with the team.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he does. I mean, he is, and I know. Hey, outside of sports, I actually know several people who have taken their children out of the school systems and do the homeschooling.
Oh, and I'm totally a homeschooling advocate myself. But
because I don't want the homeschool people to start yelling at us. I get it.
The clubhouse is a better place to.
That's where it's messed up. And as a parent, I can see that aspect too of. Just thinking, man, I know the stuff that happens. Now, granted, I'm sure things aren't as crazy as maybe the days of older days because you got social media and you got all that stuff that, it changes what people do maybe in the clubhouse. It's still an adult party going on in the clubhouse, and that needs to be exactly. So, and I'm with it. And that was the thing is the White Sox, apparently Kenny Williams said, hey man, just cut it down to like 50-50, and then the next day he showed up and the kid was right there sitting on the field with them again. And he said enough is enough, but whatever. And as the White Sox said, we didn't want to make this a deal. It became a deal. Now we got to deal with it. So, it is what it is, people on both sides of the thing, but I definitely wanted to talk about that because I thought it was an interesting story there. And as I mentioned to you in the text I sent back to you, I don't think this goes away maybe necessarily. Maybe it does because the guy got away from things. But if there is the feelings mixed in the locker room, because I'm telling you, some of the stuff that I was seeing coming out of there was very harsh against Kenny Williams, not so much anybody else, but specifically the general manager, who's also under fire with some of his players for things anyways that had nothing to do with that. So as an Indians fan, I think this is good because this definitely puts a hole in the boat of the White Sox heading into the season.
Yeah, that's true, and maybe the White Sox are the least of the concerns of the Cleveland Indians in the division. I suspect that's probably true with or without Adam LaRoche in the lineup. But I don't look for them to have a big season, a big comeback season after being as terrible as they were a year ago.
No, they improved. I don't think they were terrible. I actually thought they took some steps.
They improved their season. Well, they were, they were what, above the terrible Detroit Tigers last year, right? And that's it.
I'm just saying they took some steps from the abyss, at least. I mean, but
oh yeah, that's true. And Abreu obviously got some big time players, and I think they improved their team in the off season as well. And you got to believe that they won't be as bad as they were the last couple seasons. But yeah, you're right. I think they're, as long as we've got the Tigers and the Royals in our division and an up-and-coming Twins team, I still think the White Sox are the least of our worries.
For sure. Let's talk about the Tribe. Do you want to go Tribe since we're talking baseball?
Yeah,
there's a ton of things to do. Let's talk a little Indians. Michael Brantley getting things started by getting things started. Michael Brantley out there playing baseball this past weekend, well ahead of schedule. Many people didn't think he would even begin to see action until towards the end, if not into the extended spring training. Instead, here he is out there playing some ball, and while it's not locked in stone, it's looking really good. That opening day could be a very realistic target for Dr. Smooth.
I don't see how it couldn't be. Jerry, if he's not 100% ready,
then he wouldn't be playing right.
In a spring training game.
Right.
And the other thing, too, like he said the other day, there's still a couple of hurdles to go, back-to-back games and, 3 games in a row kind of thing. But you've got 2 weeks to get that done. The thing that I didn't really understand was, Michael Brantley will play in a minor league spring training game today. And I'm thinking to myself, what in the world is the difference in terms of somebody who's coming off an injury rehab, in terms of, is it less stressful? Is it less pressure? Why a minor league spring training game before a big league spring training game? I didn't really see the difference there. But, his first game, then not only does he hit one out in his first game, but he threw a runner out at the plate, and obviously it wasn't his throwing shoulder that we were rehabbing. But more impressive was the home run, where you've got, your power arm, your front shoulder, and at the plate is the right shoulder for Brantley, and that was the one that was hurt. So the home run is more impressive than the assist from the outfield. But you and I and every Cleveland fan would have been happy just to see him get through the game without being re-injured, and instead he comes out and plays like Michael Brantley played all the last couple of seasons. So very, very encouraging for the Tribe fans. And then yesterday, even more encouraging. We talked about Ramirez the other day, and Ramirez goes out yesterday, hits 2 bombs, and accounts for the only runs that they scored all day, and enough to win the game yesterday. So, yeah, it was a good weekend for the Tribe, winning a couple of ball games, and it looked like they're rounding into form. The pitching has been good. A couple guys had some setbacks, maybe. If you look at Cody Anderson, got knocked around a little bit, and Salazar got knocked around a little bit too. But I think people still are looking at the Indians starting pitching as among the best in baseball, and that's where we're hanging our hat this year. Let's face it.
Absolutely, and as you and I talked, just last week, even looking at there's a lot of things. You mentioned Ramirez, and that was something that we were talking. But I mean, the Indians have a lot of positive things going on, and I'm trying to think. I was thinking about when we were talking last week, and I said, well, kind of drinking a Kool-Aid a bit. I'm really feeling good about it. I've been thinking all week and trying to put my finger on what exactly I mean. Like not just say, oh, I feel good, but like the last few years, we make fun or joke or whatever, rib each other about the Indians and their philosophy of just gathering a bunch of rehab projects together. And boy, if we could get 3 or 4 of these guys to have good Moneyball and trying to maximize your resources and all of that stuff. And I've got a feeling, and it looks like spring training to me, the way that it's beginning to play out. We got so much time to go, but this, to me, feels like the opposite side of maybe when you get – because what we complain about with the Indians' philosophy is what we see in years like the last few, where when guys either have slow starts, bad starts to the season, or a couple of guys get hurt, and then the team gets stronger in the second half, and if only – it's like – these are what happens when you don't get the bona fide guy. Then you have holes in your lineup because you get these guys hurt all at the same time. And if the Indians had only done this because they tried so many things that don't pan out. But it feels to me like maybe this could be one of those seasons where, like I talked about how, some years you get the results that you thought you were going to have the year before. When you've got those big piles of players and sometimes you get the season where a bunch of them come together, not just as a team, but where you end up with surpluses at different places and different positions, because whereas last year you had 3 guys and none of them really took control of the job, sometimes you come out the next year and all 3 guys have taken a step forward. And a lot of what I'm seeing, and this is, again, spring training crap, but a lot of what I'm seeing is maybe the Indians find themselves there where they're going to have a glut of guys at a couple of positions that they can, at least have some maneuverability with, because guys maybe are coming through at the same time. Whereas instead of, if one of these guys comes through instead, damn, all 3 of them are playing strong. You know what I mean? It feels kind of like that may be happening for the Indians this season.
Yeah, you're right. And one of the things, and we were sitting here a year ago, and first of all, like you sort of alluded to, you make the disclaimer right off the top. It's spring training. Everything is overblown. Everything is exaggerated. Everything, taken out of context.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah. So that disclaimer, always aside. A year ago, we were sitting here saying, what needs to happen for the Indians to do well? And we thought, well, first of all, Jason Kipnis needs to make a big comeback. And second of all, we need to get a lot more production out of Bourne and Swisher. And those guys really need to step it up and earn their paychecks. Well, we got half of that formula. Kipnis had a great year. Kipnis went out and hit 350 through the middle of June, I think, or at least to the end of May, and leveled off a little bit, but still had a real big, solid comeback year. The other guys were gone by August or whatever. This year, we're saying some of the same things. You got to, we're obviously hoping for a big Brantley season, and that looks like we're going to be able to get that. You remember last year how disappointing, even though Corey Kluber pitched well, Corey Kluber was still, 9-16 or something a year ago. There's no way that's going to happen again.
No.
And the other pitchers, a year ago, Danny Salazar didn't make it out of April with the big league club, so that whole side of the rotation situation is stabilized and is going to be there. And then, like you say, what do we need to get? We need to get those right-handed bats being productive. And what we've seen in the spring is Gomes, Napoli, and Ramirez, frankly, because he's going to be playing lots of times, I think, against left-handed pitching. Those guys are tearing it up, and you're getting a good productive year out of Naquin. I don't know, frankly, if I were a betting man right now, I bet Naquin doesn't break camp with the big league club, even though he's hitting over 400 this spring, and doesn't have any great major league ball player that we're paying a big salary to ahead of him in center field. But I think between Roger Davis and Joey Butler and Chisenhall and Brantley, I think those are probably going to be your 4 outfielders.
And you know what? Right there, as you're talking about the outfielders alone, not even looking at third base, but look at the difference that Brantley coming back 2 months early changes in that, because the thought was, well, the Indians got some gaps, some guys to fill in. And if they had Brantley, then they'd have some good backups there, but they may have trouble until he comes back. All of a sudden, that's where I'm talking about. You've kind of got a glut. Same thing when you look on the infield, when you see, not only do you got Uribe, you got Urshela. What are they going to do with him? Ramirez, we just talked about. You got Gonzalez coming up underneath that. I mean, there's a couple of positions where in the process of going, we've got gaps here and we need to start preparing for the next year or two and getting, whether it's prospects or signing guys, whatever you're doing. Now, maybe 2 or 3 years down that road, they're in this position where you've got the glut of guys. I mean, look, and we haven't even talked about signing Bird, who has a 2-week tryout basically to hit the ground running. He's got until the 29th, not even a 10-day tryout basically, to get out there and he can opt out with. But there's a guy that had 23, 24 home runs last year and would have led the Indians in home runs had he been on the team. So there's a lot of mixable pieces here. I think the Tribe should have no problem putting together a lineup that can hit the ground running at the beginning of this season instead of maybe being so slow to it like they have been the last few years.
Yeah, I would agree, and Bird just gives you a little bit.
Yeah. How about Bird? What do you think about Bird?
Last year was right-handed power, right-handed productivity. It's not just not one of these guys that believes that you have to have a 1-2 righty-lefty balanced lineup every day. But let's face it, we just didn't have anybody that could hit for power from there. When you're counting on Ryan Rayburn to be your right-handed DH and your right-handed pinch hitter and then throw him in the lineup a couple of days a week, you don't have much. This team has a whole lot better looking right-handed power stroke this year with Santana hitting right-handed and then Napoli Gomes. Call it J-Ram, anybody else that you can throw in there. Of course, Lindor hits switch hits too. So you can put 5, 6 good, solid right-handed hitters in line up against the lefty, and all of which can hit the ball out of the park.
I'm just curious. I know the Indians fans have been wanting the Dolans to drop $100 million and get Babe Ruth uprooted from the cemetery here and fill out the lineup. But how would Indians fans feel if you got a squad here that goes maybe 6, 7, 8 guys deep that can get you close to 20 home runs in a season? That's a little bit of a different lineup. And I know you're looking and go, well, J-Rocc, you're jumping a bit far. I don't think I am, because now when you look at the pieces that they added to the pieces that they had, and obviously you're assuming that the best of the best of the best, sir, are going to come out of spring training here. There's no reason not to believe that. And I'm not saying I'm going to say something crazy by saying, hey, look at those lineups they had. Obviously, you don't have an all-star at every position, but you start to get, if you got guys that can get you between 15 and 22 home runs in nearly every spot in the lineup, you've now got a hell of a stronger lineup than anything the Indians have trotted out there in recent history.
That's true, and really, if you look at it more on a game-to-game basis,
right?
All you're really looking to do is score between 4 and 5 runs a game on average instead of between 3 and 4.
Especially with the pitching,
because with the starting pitching that you have, you're getting close to that 4.5 shape with this team. Bullpens are always a crapshoot, and you never know. But again, talk about piling up people, Jerry. Jabba Chamberlain having a real good spring. Austin Adams not doing too bad either, and throw that against McAllister, Manship, Shaw, and the rest of the bullpen arms from the right side, and of course Cody Allen. You've got 6 guys that you're going to have to pick, 6 or 7 guys, throw in Otero and some other people that you're going to have to pick, 4, maybe 5 right-handed arms. It helps everybody.
You know what? You mentioned a name, by the way, since we're going to pitching. I mean, I'm just going to start with the king, Corey Kluber. Does he look like he is ready to start the season like yesterday? Because he sure does to me.
He's got something to prove. He knows he had a down year last year, and even though toward the end he pitched great, even when he was pitching, in losing causes, he was pitching great. But in the first half of the season, he was not great. And he was out. At some point, wasn't he like 2-8 or 2-9 or something like some crazy start that he had last year? And I think that just motivated him. They say he came in great physical shape, but he's been pitching like the 2014 Cy Young Award winner.
And you can just feel it. You can feel him getting ready to have that bounce back season. And like you said, boy, if the Indians can average 5 runs a game, watch out. That's all I'm going to say. It's a lot of ifs, and we've still got a lot to see. But I'm very encouraged by what we've seen so far. And now, and like Bruce mentioned when he called earlier, you see the lineups, and you talked about it when we started. You'd see a couple of starters here and there. Now they start to look a little more like the real thing with each game that gets by, and we get closer. We are 2 weeks from today to getting this thing rolling.
Yeah, I cannot wait. To me, there's only a couple of questions now, and one of them has to do, you got to believe that even with Gio Urshela hitting 400 or 380 or whatever he's hitting now, if Uribe presumably is back now, I think, and I don't know if he'll be in the lineup today, but it looks like, you're paying him $4 million. He's going to be your third baseman starting out. And the other thing is the center field job. Now that, like I say, with Brantley back, it changes everything. Roger Davis can now, be over in center field instead of platooning in right or, taking place of Brantley in left. So, it opens things up for him and options for that. But, the other question, of course, is does Naquin make his team? And I think he's probably earned a shot, but the way this club operates, you wouldn't be a bit surprised to see him be sent back and go down and play in Columbus and light it up there and be consistent day to day, and maybe we'll revisit you in May or June.
Dan Wismar, J-Rocc, we're talking a little bit of Indian spring training and feeling good about it as they're 2 weeks away from opening day, and you're listening to the Sports Fix. Hit us up, Facebook, Twitter, email, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfix, CLE, email, thesportsfix@AOL.com. How are you feeling about Indians spring training with 2 weeks to go? Dan, we said, you know what, I'm not even going to mess with the Browns right now. We'll finish up with them. Cavaliers, I want to talk about the Cavs because we've been sitting here, and each week it seems, depending on how the last few games have gone, people's feelings have gone from one end of the rudder to the other, but I'm still sitting in the same place I was. I think the Cavs are a hell of a talented team, and yet, in spite of all that, they in no way, to me, are a championship team. They are an Eastern Conference champion. They are the Central Division champion. They are the best of the other 29 teams in the NBA. But the Cavaliers, as their mentality is currently constituted, I don't care about picking it up. You mentioned earlier the water faucet, and you see that with schools like a Michigan State that think that they can turn it on. The Cavs think that when the playoffs come, and I agree, LeBron has another level in the playoffs. Fine. The Cavs have another level, and that'll be good enough to sweep Toronto, to sweep Chicago, to walk your way through the guys in the Eastern Conference that are not on your level. But when you're talking about San Antonio, who, by the way, knocked off Golden State in a hell of a game the other day and continued their home winning streak, between them and Golden State, there's not a comparison. The Cavs, to me, I'm trying to remember who wrote this over the weekend. It might have been Livingston, but something he said reminded me of something that we said a couple weeks ago when I said the Cavs look to me like a team trying to copy the style of another team that's not themselves. They look like they're out there trying to play Golden State basketball. They're trying to play a style of basketball that does not fit the team that they are. Their defense is just not what it was before. They don't have that same, and it's nuts because we mentioned Ty Lue was the defensive coordinator, and they've dropped middle of the pack. I think since Ty Lue became the coach, they're now like 16th or 18th in the league when it comes to that defensive efficiency stat that they were top 3, top 2 in the league in the first half of the season there. So, but the game in Miami, the hell with all this diction about what I think of the Cavs. That was BS. What we continue to see, and I don't think it's just fans getting upset about nothing. To me, it's not just optics. I'm tired of seeing LeBron James has more friends on the Miami Heat than I think he does on the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm tired of watching the Cavs get blown out in Miami, and LeBron James is high. Like, did you read the story coming out of Miami where the Cavs have the fired up locker room speech at halftime, and Ty Lue says, we're not going to give up. We're going to go out here. We're going to fight back. We're going to work our way back. And they come out of the locker room, and as the team's shooting around, there's LeBron yucking it up in the corner with Dwayne Wade again while his team's down 800 points.
Yeah, that was disturbing. And then, of course, it's
Doesn't
LeBron
make me
after
happy.
the game who says, well, the idea that we can't win in Miami, and he lost 10 of 11 or whatever down there, that's a real concern. Well, like you say, it didn't appear to be a real big concern before and during the game, and in terms of his effort, especially on the defensive end, which was non-existent. Yeah, you're right. And as far as how they're playing, I don't think necessarily trying to be like Golden State, fall in love with a three and run on the court and everything else, because those glimpses that we see of them trying to be one certain style of play, those things last about a week, and then they're moving on to something else. And then they're going back to going small, then they're going back to going big, then they're going back, juggling the starting lineup again. Not the way that a conference favorite wants to play their last dozen and a half games of the year. In terms of the competition with Toronto for the number one seed, I did a little check-in today, and if there's any good news, Jerry, I think it's this. The Raptors have 8 road games left to the Cavs 6. And listen to the teams that the Raptors still have to play on the road. Boston, Houston, New Orleans, Memphis, San Antonio, Atlanta. That's 6 of them. They also have the Knicks and the Nets. But those 6 road games are probably tougher than much of what the Cavs have to deal with. Cavs 6 road games: Brooklyn, the Knicks, the Hawks, Milwaukee, the Pacers, and the Bulls. I think the Raptors certainly have a tougher goal with not only more road games, but against better opponents. So, I still see, even though the lead has dwindled down to 1 game here, I still see the Cavs, locking up the number 1 seed, just because I think they've got a better schedule going down the stretch. But like you say, can you see this Cavs team as currently constituted realistically trying to go into Golden State or San Antonio and win a Game 7 in the finals? I certainly can't.
Dan, it's not just to attack LeBron or any of that. Like, when I watch this team, okay, now some of you that have been listening to me for years are probably going to say, well, I've heard you say this before. I used to always say I thought LeBron James was the ultimate front runner, just in general, his mentality in life. The Cavs whole team, I've been saying for the last 2 months since they fired Blatt, I said, man, I don't think this team has an identity. That's their identity to me. They're the ultimate front runners. When the Cavs are in front, it's high fives. And by the way, I do get a little tired, not just of the Cavs. My buddy made this observation the other day, and I said, yes. I'm tired of the NBA in general. These guys on the bench act like every play is the greatest thing they've ever seen in their life. A guy makes a shot, they fall off the bench acting like they've never seen anybody make a three-pointer before or make a pass. But anyways,
right, and that's okay if you're Monmouth College, right, Jared? But not if you're in the NBA.
The whole league does it. I mean, these guys will fall off the bench at the end of games for the dumbest things, and you're going, come on, man. You see better than this in practice. But anyways, the Cavs, to me, feel like the ultimate front runners as far as their relationships with each other. When they're on the court, playing good, looking good, running teams out of the building, it's high fives, it's dances, it's all the fun in games. When this team is trailing late in games, when they're losing, when they're not where they think they should be, I watch 5 individuals on the court, their eye contact with each other, their body language, their communication. They all go in defend for yourself mode, and it's so obvious. And if anybody else doesn't see it, then maybe I'm insane and I'm just making this up, but I don't think I am. It's right in front of me. When they're down, they don't galvanize like a team. When a team's, them teams that galvanize, like the Cavs did in the playoffs last year, they'd get down and they'd be in the huddle, and David Blatt, even if LeBron's ignoring him, he's pretending to call up a play in the huddle, and they're looking at each other, and Deli's looking at JR, and Shump's looking at him, and they go out on the court and they got that look in their face. They're on a mission as a team. When this team trails, I never ever see that. I see a bunch of guys that go into individual mode, and it's not an everyday thing. Yeah, there'll be times that they buckle down at the end of games and pull out wins, but these things are going to be magnified in the playoffs. And I'm telling you, if they don't change it, how do you change it? How does Ty Lue, who already was the biggest mistake of the season to me, was making that coaching change in the middle of the season, when the guy looks at you after you get blown out by 20 points in Miami and he says, well, guess it's back to the drawing board. How the hell do you go back to the drawing board with with a dozen games left in the season? What does that mean, back to the drawing board?
That's funny. I had not heard that.
You didn't hear him say that?
Yeah. It is kind of a bizarre approach to things. And I guess what you have to do is every game they lose is remember, this is this guy's first rodeo.
Right.
Right. They traded 20-some years of head coaching experience for 0 years of head coaching experience. We shouldn't be surprised at any of this.
Let me ask you, Dan.
Surprised about Ty Lue having to sort of wing it in press conferences when he's asked a question he's never been asked before, in a situation he's never been in before. That he says something dumb, or he says something that maybe he should have thought about before he said, or whatever. We shouldn't be. There's no reason for us to be surprised at any of it.
Dan, I got a question for you, and this is not to even talk about coaching styles or the actual results, although for anybody that's asking, David Blatt was winning at a 715 clip when he was fired. Cavs are at about 690 right now, which I think they'd win that if they didn't have any coach out there on the floor. They'd probably win 6 or 7 out of every 10 games anyway. But and I think it was Livingston, again, I might have seen him that tweeted this quote, but it's definitely true in my opinion. Would you agree with the statement that in general, the Cavs are nowhere near as prepared game to game, opponent to opponent, and ready to play under Ty Lue than they were under David Blatt? And that to me is a sign of a coach who is friendlier with the players than he needs to be.
I think you'd have to say that. I think just having observed them, the losses have been worse losses. The wins have been, in large part, been tighter wins. And yeah, there have been times when they just appear to not give a damn. And I don't think I remember seeing that much at all under David Blatt for a season and a half. Just didn't see it. Maybe he wasn't as chummy with them, although I always thought, and I said it often on the show, that I thought David Blatt got along well with the players, and I thought their body language seemed to indicate that they pretty much enjoyed being around him and personally liked him, based on all the interaction and body language that you see on the court and off. But I think you can certainly say, and who knows what the cause and effect is, whether it's because he's too chummy with the players, Ty Lue, that is, or not. But certainly he's closer to their age. He's able to better relate to them as peers instead of, boss and subordinate kind of thing. But for whatever reason, what you're describing is evident. It's you can see it on the court in their performance, and it's a team that does not come as ready to play. So many times they're just slow out of the gate and find themselves down double digits in the first quarter. And especially on the road, you're just not going to come back from that.
And what do you do when you get in the playoffs? Everybody wants to, sit here and look and say that they're just going to flip it. LeBron knows what he's doing when they get to the playoffs, man. But I don't see, and I hate to be that, but I don't see a positive ending.
Well, a team like the Heat, Jerry, that's got to be a real concern. I mean, the Cavs are sort of
they're set for a second round matchup with them, bro.
Yeah, that could be a second round loss. If you can't win in Miami, and obviously, I think the Cavs certainly are capable of winning in Miami in the playoffs. But all the Heat's got to do is come up here and steal one game in Cleveland, and then the pressure is really on these guys to go down there and win in the place where they know that it's very tough for them to win, and they haven't had a track record of winning. And the Heat playing very good ball lately. Speaking of which, I think the best performance in the NBA I've seen in the last month is Victor Oladipo in that Orlando game. My God, that kid had an unreal game. He is really turning into, could be a very elite player in this league in another year or two. I mean, that he just went off. I could not believe it.
Oh, I agree with you, man. That's a guy that I wouldn't have minded them taking in that draft. Absolutely, Oladipo is a good young one there for sure. And again, the Cavs. We're going to sit here and we're going to watch it together. But I'm not trying to predict gloom and doom. I mean, it's just, to me, this is just sitting there staring everybody clear in the face. And this is where, for everybody that wants to say, it reminds me of the people that said all the stuff Manziel was doing didn't matter over the years until it all mattered, and then all of a sudden it did, when people were saying, no, it does matter. With the tweets and the going to Miami and the hugging it up with Wade, for the guys that say, this doesn't matter, and guys that just need sports talk material are the ones that have a problem with that. No, the tweets, that crap that I personally think that it's all intentional, and it's literally meant to get exactly the reaction that it's getting, not just from the fans, but from the people that run the team as well. That kind of stuff looms even more when you get into situations like this, because it's out there. I mean, and so to me, I don't care. LeBron. I said this to a guy the other day. He goes, so you think LeBron leaves? I said, no. I said, I stick by my assertion. LeBron James has trapped himself into Cleveland, but I don't say it like it's a set of handcuffs. LeBron James chose where he was going to spend the rest of his career, but that does not mean that he chose how he was going to spend it there. LeBron is perfectly happy to stay in Cleveland for the rest of his career. He's not going anywhere. This is his castle, and he is going to put his feet up on the table, and he is going to run his castle as he sees fit. And I just honestly believe that I think we're seeing a combination of the best and the worst that comes with having LeBron James. And I think that right now he's putting his feet up on the furniture, and he's stretching out and just making sure that everybody knows what everybody's role in the food chain is, man.
Yeah, there certainly is some of that, and I always have to keep going back to, and you were earlier pointing out that there are those of us, and I count myself among them many times, who convince themselves that once the playoffs start that there can be a different approach, there can be a different LeBron James. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, or a different Cavs team, I should say. We always get the same LeBron James. But let's face it, this grind is now coming down to a close, and we're approaching the 70-game mark. And, this 82 one-night stands to seed the playoff tournament is such a grind, and it's just any way you can get through it, good nights, bad nights. Every team has them. Just to get through it and seed this tournament, it's a bitch. And, I just have to keep reminding myself about that you can't, just like losing up in Utah the other night, fourth game road trip, and you've blown out some good teams, some decent teams, and, you'll have nights like that. Well, we're in the number one seed position, and I think we're going to stay there, and getting through the grind by any means possible is all you've got to do. Everything starts fresh. Our players are healthy for the most part. Bring it on. Let's have the playoffs. And right now, I said the other day, I thought that maybe, Cleveland would be once again bitten by the curse of having a really, really good team come up against a team that is historically good. So the Michael Jordan Bulls, the John Elway Broncos, whatever you want to call it. Many examples over the years, but maybe it's just our luck once again. But we'll see, and the pleasure will be in finding out.
And I have a question for you, and I mean, this is something we'll revisit in 2 months, but let's just fast forward to June, and let's say that the Cavaliers don't win the NBA championship. Does Tyronn Lue have a job after that?
If they don't win it?
Yes.
Boy, I don't know. I think David Griffin is
That's
way,
the next
way
one.
out on
Does
a,
David Griffin
way
have
out
a job?
on a limb.
Yeah, does he have a job at the end of the season?
I think if Ty Lue doesn't have a job, neither does David Griffin.
That's where I'm at. They both go. If one goes, they both go.
I think that may be how it eventuates because he's so far out on a limb right now. His, we talked about that guy's brass balls back at the halfway point of the season, and you got to hand it to him. He did have those.
You know what? Not so much though, Dan, because I was thinking about this the other day talking to a guy. I said, you know what? Maybe it wasn't as ballsy as we think, because you're thinking, okay, if this thing blows up, Dan Gilbert's just going to fire them both at the end of the season. But they also have the built-in, well, we made the change at mid-season. So I think it's possible that they can both easily buy themselves another season. Although if I'm Dan Gilbert, when I said it, you and I talked the day after they got rid of Blatt, I said, if I'm Dan Gilbert, when David Griffin walks up to me on January 22nd or whatever day that was and says, here's what I want to do, I say, okay, but you live with it. Make sure, because if this thing doesn't work, you'll be joining David Blatt on the sidelines, man. And that, to me, because that's the risk of it. It wasn't, will I keep my job after? To me, it was, you say, give him some credit for not sticking with the pat hand, but at the same time, now you look at it and you go, boy, was that the ultimate panic move made by, and again, for people that say tweets don't matter and all these little stupid things matter, the internal pressure that is created by them does matter, and perhaps leads to things like this. So we're gonna watch it play out.
I think one thing I'll mention to you and close with this.
Yeah.
That I don't know if you saw the Windhorst article on ESPN this morning.
Which
about
one?
Tyronn Lue.
Oh, the honeymoon period. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, and I think what you just mentioned is already starting to come out. I believe, if I recall, it was a quote from Ty Lue himself, who basically was talking about all the adjustments and the changes and everything else, and he said, well, it's hard, especially when you had to start in mid-season. He's already starting to use that
setting
as
it up.
the reason for why it's so hard. And so it just, when you said that, it just reminded me of something that I just read, something that Lou said to that exact effect, that hey, it's hard when you sort of start out in the flow and you're in the middle of the season and it's hard to get things going your way, So we're starting to hear it already. And I don't think it was excuse making, but it was just pointing out, hey, I didn't have a training camp to install my system. I didn't have this and that, and that might be the what we hear in the off season. If the Cavs don't win at all.
Yeah, because he said, oh, well, it's tough to make these changes midway through the season. And going back real quick to those stats that I mentioned, to be specific, when I talked about the drop-off on the defensive end, the Cavaliers were third under David Blatt defensively. They have dropped to now
20th?
14th overall when you look at the whole season as a defensive rating. But in defensive field goal percentage, they've dropped all the way to 20th, yes, as you just said, which is bottom third of the NBA. And that's amazing when you look at the counter, which is when David Blatt was the head coach and Lou was the defensive coordinator. Excuse me, they were fifth, not third. They were fifth in defensive rating and ninth in field goal percentage for the defense when things were in the first half of the season. So they've dropped from 5th to 14th and 9th to 21st in the two key defensive standings or statistics that people look at when they're judging things, while the defensive guy has been elevated to the top of the team. Again, it just shows to me, I think that I guess if I was to sum it up, my thoughts on why Ty Lue became the head coach is I don't think all of the Cavs had a problem with David Blatt. I think the most important Cavs had a problem with David Blatt, and the Cavs panicked, thinking that the most important Cavs spoke for all of the Cavs.
Yeah, that may be, and someday maybe we'll find out for sure. But
I'd sure love to read the book.
Maybe sooner instead of later. But in the meantime, hey, wanted to just real quick get what's your take on RG3? I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that. I did hear you say that you weren't enamored with taking a QB at number 2.
Yeah, we talked about
that. That would seem to indicate that you're more interested in an RG3 or a Kaepernick maybe than taking a Carson Wentz or a Jared Goff.
Here's my thing. Looking at value and what I think you can get and where it's at. And this is not take the Buckeye, guys. For all you guys that know I love OSU, take the Buckeye honkness out of it. I think you get better value getting a potential. Look, the Browns are not hitting the ground running no matter. They're hitting the ground and stumbling no matter what we do this season as far as results on the field.
Right, we're assuming that we're going to be back.
We know we're building.
A year from now.
We're going to pick a guy anyway. And, I mean, to me, I don't think Cardale Jones steps in and plays right away in the NFL. But I think of every player you can draft at quarterback, none has the potential to be as good as Cardale Jones if he's developed properly. And with that being said, if I can get I don't care if it's RG3, although he intrigues me because of Hugh Jackson. And if you were going to talk yourself into Colin Kaepernick, I can definitely talk myself into a year of RG3. I've got Josh McCown if I need him. I've got options. So regardless, quarterback's going to be a finite position of production for the Browns no matter what. But, I mean, I'm either going to waste my first pick in the draft on a quarterback that I'm developing, and if I'm developing him anyway, even if I'm throwing him out there from game one, regardless of my developmental plan, I think if I'm developmentaling anybody, I'd rather it be Cardale Jones. But if you go veteran and you go developmental 3rd, 4th round, which I think you can probably get away with to get Cardale, or if you see somebody's going to take him, maybe you got to trade up a little bit to get him, but not much. He's going to be middle rounds there for you to get. Then you can really get some true best players available with your first couple of picks in the draft. And I just think that right now, that's more important for the Browns. If there was a quarterback that got me where I said, damn it, we can't go forward without this guy, that's different. But since I don't have that about these guys, they're all nice pieces, and I go, well, I like Wentz, or maybe Goff develops, or maybe Connor Cook, which I'm hearing Hugh Jackson may kind of be intrigued by him later. That's a guy. If you're not going to take Cardale, maybe they're looking. But I like the idea of getting a Cardale Jones and taking a guy that knows quarterbacks and letting him spend the whole season. You're coaching the team, and then you're dealing with Cardale on the side, and he's able to really just learn and catch up his mind to his physical skill set. But regardless, that allows you to hit some better positions in the first few rounds of the draft, whether it's Bosa, whether it's grabbing a wide receiver, whether it's an offensive lineman, wherever you want to go with those first couple of picks, because we're still going to be picking top 5 next year. We're still going to have a shot at some quarterbacks. We're still going to have all the same questions, but at least this way, I would rather have 2 or 3 people fill gaps for sure and still have a question mark at quarterback than have a developing question mark at quarterback and still have all the other holes too.
Okay.
That was a lot.
With you, and I don't disagree on that. I'd be fine with taking. What I don't think you can do, Jerry, is not sign a veteran and not take a quarterback at 2.
Absolutely. You can't blow both.
I don't think the fan base, you know how fickle and how celebrity conscious and everything, and how QB-centric all the thinking is of the fan base. I don't think you can trot out McCown next year and say, here's our guy.
No. I don't. You can,
unless you're developing a rookie that you drafted high,
and you say we're gonna let McCown start the first 4 or 5 games of the season, and then we'll get so and so in there when he's ready. One of those kind of things. You can get away with that.
I don't think you can do that. I don't think the team, the front office, can get away with that.
Oh, you don't even think they can even go there?
Of the fan base. And I'm not talking about the season ticket buying fan base. I'm talking about the overall fan base and the media and the criticism that would rain down on this club if they decide to say, hey, we're going to draft a kid and in the third round, and then we're going to show you, Josh McCown. Just don't see that, to be your starter. Just don't see that happening. And by the way, whatever you do at quarterback, I don't think you're going to get Cardale Jones any time beyond the third round. I think he'll be gone in 3.
That's about right. That's what I'm thinking.
I don't see a 4th round pick for him. Somebody's going to roll the dice on him, just romanced by the physical talent.
What do you think about that? I mean, do you agree or disagree with my assessment? I think that no matter what, you're taking a bet on one of these quarterbacks, and I want to bet on the best skill set out there, and that's Cardale Jones.
Well, that is debatable, I suppose. You don't
think so?
Certainly as far as arm strength, I think maybe. In terms of, experience, no. Jared Goff's been a 3-year starter. Carson Wentz been a 3-4-year starter.
Hasn't started a game in the NFL.
10 games.
Hasn't started a game in the NFL, though. I mean, just like Cardale.
That's a factor. So, in other words, I'm not convinced that Cardale Jones has the best physical skill set. He's maybe the biggest, strongest, best arm, but that's not all that goes into it. So, I don't really disagree with you on the idea of. For example, I'd be okay with signing RG3. I'm actually more interested in signing RG3 than Kaepernick.
Way better, yes, because, absolutely. Yes.
I don't think that's close. And I think that if you do sign an RG3, you could go ahead and draft Laramie Tunsil. God knows you're going to need an offensive tackle, a blue chip offensive tackle here on this team. Sooner instead of later, especially if, like you say, it makes sense to trade Joe Thomas. Even though they're saying, I read today, they're not planning to trade Joe Thomas, which basically is a signal that if you want Joe Thomas, he's not going to come cheap. But in any event, that other right tackle spot is wide open, and Laramie Tunsil is one of those elite players that be perfectly okay drafting him at number 2 and taking a wide receiver at 32 for that matter, and going with the idea that maybe next year is when you grab your franchise guy, whether it's the kid from Clemson or whoever you decide is your guy. But I don't know. Something tells me that Hugh is going to want to get down to business developing his next great quarterback sooner instead of later.
All right, I got a project for you. We're going to have some fun next week because I want to know who has the better physical projections. I'm not calling you out. I'm saying, who do you project more than Card? I'm not talking about experience, wins, playing on the field, or anything. Just a physical projection. I don't. Who do you? We'll get into it next week. Who you've got higher than Cardale
and as far as like a pure physical, I think that's fine. I'm talking about smarts. I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, okay. Because
reading defense.
I'm just talking
about that go into being a quarterback that don't have anything to do with the body.
Yeah, I'm just talking the measurables and that kind of stuff, throwing the routes, those kind of things, and I am intrigued by. I mean, think about it. Okay, we're talking ourselves, or I'm not, because I'm not into Kaepernick, but guys are talking themselves into, hey, Hugh Jackson can do some good stuff with Colin Kaepernick. Hugh Jackson can do some good stuff with RG3. Hell, I even heard people say Hugh Jackson may be able to save Johnny Manziel when they were living in the fantasy land a month ago or whatever. Okay, I think Hugh Jackson can do some hella fine things with Cardale Jones and the time to develop him. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, sure. And if Cardale Jones is sitting there with the second pick of the third round, I'd be all about drafting him.
I feel like a total Buckeye honk, like just that guy that's just saying, yeah, draft the Buckeye. But, man, that dude is a monster with an arm, and we finally have a coach that can actually coach quarterbacks, so that's why I think more intrigued by it as usual. But we go back to RG3. We can talk about the draft next week. I am interested, as long as we're not, because we talked about him about two weeks ago or so. I'm not trying to pay the big money and lock into 3-4 years of RG3, but if we can give him a backloaded contract where only the first year or two is guaranteed, and and he's got some incentives, but either side can get out of this thing within a year or two. I'd be for that, because that would be, especially if you're not going first round with your quarterback, you could sell the team, especially because this is not a good reason, but you do have that reservoir from a few years ago when they, RG3 fever caught Cleveland until the trade never happened and he went to Washington. So there could be worse ways to go. But I think the great thing is you're not bringing him into any expectation. So if he does stink, it gets mixed in with we were going 3-13 anyway. And if he excels, then you get some positive look at how Hugh Jackson can develop quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's true. I think right now, Browns fans are hungering to see the team making some positive strides forward, and signing 2 free agents that were undrafted players ain't it. And so, it would be, I think, a shot in the arm for the organization to sign a guy like that, and at least show that, hey, we're taking some steps forward.
I got a couple real quick Browns kind of things I wanted to get into before I let you go, and one of them is Browns fans. And this one you can't blame on anybody but the fan base for doing it to themselves, because it's not like the Browns are out here although they'll talk with their organizational speak, like they can't just come out and admit that they're blowing everything up. But sometimes fans drive me nuts because they set themselves up for this. I mean, obviously, we've got, the Facebook page alone, it's got like 20-some thousand followers. So I see a lot of different comments, a lot of people's opinions, even when they're not talking directly to me. I think I get a good slice at the fan base. And so there's tons of Browns fans that will look at you with both eyes open and go, well, yeah, the Browns are rebuilding. And then they'll take a breath, and the next sentence is, but I really think with a good draft and a couple of these guys coming up, they could be competitive this year. And these, I love watching people talk themselves into rebuilding means maybe in a good year they could go 6 or 7 wins and be close. And I'm like, I think you are completely not. But anyways, they're not being realistic. But I look at these, and I've had somebody send me a message just the other day that made it fresh in my mind that said, I know the Browns are rebuilding and this time they're going to do it right, but I really think if a couple things go their way, they could surprise some people this year. And I'm like, they aren't surprising anybody but the janitors this year, brother, if they show up early to the building, because this one is the baseline. It's like when you take a baseline test, when you find out, when you're looking for rock bottom, that's what you develop in this year. You find out what rock bottom is and where you start the build up from. But I love watching guys go, yeah, I know it's going to be a process, but I think they can be all right this year. No, don't tell yourself that, because you're just going to be mad at the Browns in 6 months when they're 2-14.
Well, there is that. There is that eternal optimism that the Browns fan, and I'm one of them, can put together. There is a counter argument to what you're saying, however, and that is that 3-13 team should have beaten the San Diego Chargers. This team took the world champion Denver Broncos to overtime. Should have won that game. Should have beat the Baltimore Ravens. Should have beat the Buffalo Bills in overtime.
But that team's gone.
There's 4 wins right there. This terrible team was right there within a second or two, or one play, literally one play, from winning all 4 of those football games. And that's 7 wins instead of 3. So, the difference between being a competitive team and being a 3-13 team is a pretty fine line in the NFL. It really is.
Agreed.
I'm not under any illusions about how this team now, having lost 4 key players, is a worse team than the team that finished the season. But I also am realistic enough to know that teams go worst to first all the time, and that this team did, in fact, play competitive games with several playoff teams, and including the world champion Broncos, that shouldn't even have been an overtime game in Cleveland. We should have won it in regulation. The gap isn't that huge.
Okay.
So there's at least a counterpoint
yes.
to what you're saying about about how miserable the roster is.
And I'll go counterpoint to you. This is not, like you said, you hit it yourself. This isn't even last year's team. So that changes that. If you were coming back with the same team, then you could say,
oh, you're right. It's a team minus Alex Mack, Mitchell Schwartz.
But here's the scary thing.
We didn't get much out of Tayshaun Gibson this year, frankly, out of Travis Benjamin.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree.
But the two offensive linemen are not insignificant losses. They are very, very significant losses. And so, like I said, we don't even have the 2015 Browns anymore.
Now, here's my other thing, though.
Well made.
And this is a scary thing, actually, for Browns fans and for the Browns organization. And this is somewhere that I think the NFL actively, maybe whether it's knowingly or I know it's knowingly, but they unwittingly participate in these bad teams not being able to get out of the rut of being bad. And here's why. What you just mentioned, all that talk about, and the league manufactures the ability for a team to go from last to first in one season by the way they put together their schedule. And my thing is that you're exactly right. This miserable Browns team that they're getting ready to start building from scratch could luck into a fortunate schedule this season and hit the right teams in the right weeks, and they could accidentally go 6-10. Now you might go, oh well, another 6-10 season. At the when you're rebuilding these teams, that accidental 6-10 or 7-9 season screws the whole thing up because you're now drafting at the bottom. Now, then again, if you're able to draft, it doesn't matter where you draft because the Patriots draft 31st every season. But it does screw up your process of building through high picks in the draft. And then if you don't have, where we've gotten bit, is not having the right front office in, they screw up the draft and you start back all over. But that's one thing that bugs me about the NFL is that the accidental progress can happen. Just like Dan said, the Browns can stumble into an accidental 6-win season next year, and while that looks good from the record books, it could actually retard the progress that you're making. And that's the NFL doing it on purpose. They give bad teams bad schedules the next season. That's why you wonder why a team will be good one year and bad the next. It's because their schedule was easy one year, and then the next year, because they had a better record, the schedule is harder, and they go right back to being a bad team because they weren't a good team yet. It's just the manipulative schedule makes them appear better or worse than they are.
Well, sure, yeah. There's a fool's gold aspect to the Browns being 7-9,
right?
In 2014, we had the very, very soft schedule, and you got all the Oaklands and Jacksonville and all those teams, and home games against some certain teams, and so certainly there was a fool's gold aspect to 7-9 in 2014. Then you come back, and everybody knew it. As soon as you went 7-9, you had a much tougher schedule in 2015. It's not like that was a mystery to anybody. We knew looking at the schedule that we were in for trouble, relative to 2014. So that's a good example of that in effect. However, I don't disagree with the NFL giving the worst teams the softer schedules. Because what the NFL wants is 32-8-8 football.
They want parity,
really.
baby. Yes,
and
yes.
And that's what their goal is. That's what their goal is in the draft. That's what their goal is in equalizing the TV money to every single franchise, so that there's no way you can lose money even when you're awful. And that's what they're about. They want every division race to go down to week 17 undecided, and every wild card team to be decided in the fourth quarter of the week 17 games. That's what they're going for. And
yes, it is.
You can't blame them because people love it, and that's what America loves. Their NFL football and their NFL playoffs and their NFL draft, frankly, is maybe the second biggest event of the year after the Super Bowl.
I agree. And you know what? I want to end it on this. It's perfect while we're talking about Browns fans. And hey, you guys are loyal. Cleveland fans are as loyal as they come. And that sets me up perfectly for this. You've been talking about the season tickets thing. Last Friday was the deadline. My sister, and she actually posted this on Facebook. She posted a big long thing the other day explaining the end of the line. And she told the story about how two girls, because it was her and her girlfriend, they back in 1988, they went down to Cleveland Browns Stadium and they picked out their seats. And at that time, I want to say they were $150 or something, because they were up in the dog pound. They had some.
I bought them the same year, Jay.
There you go. Wow.
Same year I bought
1988.
mine, 1988.
She said it was
July.
July.
You're right in the middle of the COSAR years. You figure
Yeah.
the team's going to be good for a while. Things were definitely on the up and up. But go ahead with your story.
She took me to 2 games that season. I went to the Houston game at the end where they won and got into the playoffs, and then I went to the wild card game the following week when they rematched each other in the wild card round of the playoffs. And the Browns. That was when the guy got his neck broken, the cameraman back in the corner. Of the
I was at both of those games. Yeah.
So she told the story about how back then they did that and they went through all this 25 years and they lost a team and got a team back and paid for PSLs and all of this stuff, and now her tickets are $350 or $375. They're like $200 more than they were at the time that they bought them back in the day. And I believe she was talking about for the pair of seats, but regardless, she said, I can't believe I'm doing this, but this is the end of the relationship. They want me to renew by Friday, and I'm not going to do it. They've asked me to wait one more year, and I've waited one more year, and I've given it and given it and given it, and I can't justify it anymore. It's not because I don't love this team and the time I spent, but I can't justify allowing them to think that there's no repercussions for continuing to put this product out on the field. And when I feel that they're giving me something that earns my money, I will gladly buy tickets again, but I'm walking away. And she posted the next day, she said, boy, their ears must have been ringing. She said 9 minutes after she posted this big thing on Facebook, she tagged the Browns in it and everything about how she was not renewing. 9 minutes later, she got a call from a season ticket representative at the Browns talking to her about her decision. So whether that was coincidence or not, she said the Browns called her then 3 times, follow-up calls, when she kept telling them no. And they keep calling back and trying to pitch her on renewing her season tickets. And they literally were telling her how things are changing, how things are turning around. They understand how frustrated they went through the process of trying to resell my sister on not walking away from 30-year-old season tickets by literally going, hey, we got a new coach, we know things got messed up. But I mean, that's what the Browns, and she actually posted, she goes, I'd like to know what the percentage, and I don't know. I'm going to talk to some people. I'm curious what this year's renewal percentages, but it's got to be worse than ever because I've never heard of the Browns being so aggressive to recapture people that are walking like they are this year. Leads me to believe that a lot of people finally made that decision to cancel 10, 15, 20, 30-year season tickets.
Yeah, you're probably right. Incidentally,
did you renew?
I re-upped with them.
Okay.
But I did it on Friday afternoon at 5
You
o'clock.
waited.
And I was on the phone on Friday with the Cleveland Browns as well.
What can you throw in? What can you give me here?
I've been on the phone with the Cleveland Browns ticket people probably 3 times in the last month. Just a friendly reminder, Dan, the deadline March 18th.
They're on it, man.
Renew. And I know. And, of course, after writing my article a couple months ago, which I showed you, why I stay, I couldn't very well duck out on them this year. But I'm very, very close to being in that exact same situation where at some point in time, it's no longer going to be worth it to me trudging down Lakeside Avenue in a sleet storm at 12 o'clock noon on a Sunday to go watch a garbage product on the field. So,
and you know what?
After 28 years, it really is getting old. And
with my sister,
so I'm close to that. I'm close.
With my sister, though, it wasn't even like giving up or not worth the money. It was almost like this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you kind of thing. But she just literally felt that was the only way that you're ever going to get these people to, and I know that means obviously you have to think that they're losing on purpose, which we know they're not losing on purpose, but not losing on purpose and not minding losing because you still make a lot of money are kind of the same thing, just with a different a different way of describing it. And I think that's what most people feel the Browns are doing by this point in time. We're not necessarily happy that we're losing, but we don't necessarily care because we got your money anyway. And so with my sister, it was more of a, I'm giving up something that I love and I'm going to sacrifice for myself to hopefully make these people realize that if enough of us do this, then they realize that we finally said enough is enough. And I told you, I've felt for years, I thought that the year that Jimmy Haslam bought the team, they were on the precipice of falling off a cliff that they weren't going to recover from. And I felt that the Browns that year, they had already dropped 23% over the last few years in their attendance, and it was slowly starting to get faster. I thought they were about to hit that apathy stage that they've never hit before. Jimmy Haslam bought the team and breathed new life into the fan base. All of a sudden, Jerry Jones was coming to ride the white horse and save the day. And I think that very quickly, that's right back where this fan base is right now. Is maybe even at a lower point, because at least before they had an owner that, he didn't care, but he wasn't a crook. He wasn't maybe about to go to prison. Like, on top of everything else, they feel like they're getting scammed by the guy that owns the team. I mean, so I think that the Browns are in a really risky place, and that's why I can't wait to see those numbers. I I think it'll at least be double digits of the percentage of Browns fans that this year finally broke the long, and especially the long ones. I want to see how many of those 10-year plus, 15-year plus, or even the ones especially that go before 99, how many of them finally walked after this past season?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And another thing that is hurting them this year is they have decided to go, they moved up the deadline. It used to be May 1. Now March 18th, they moved it up a month and a half.
Oh,
they
really?
want their money sooner. Now you can pay them in 6 easy installments from March through August.
6 easy installments of
$400 that's what they do. You give them the credit card number and they tag your credit card for 1/6 of your total each month for 6 months, which makes it, as long as they've got your credit card, they're getting their money one way or another. Or if you're going to pay it all up front, they want it March 18th. So that deadline's passed, and that is sooner than they've done it in the past. But yeah, I think you're probably right. Part of it is just, hey, we're not getting any younger. It's not as easy for me to park up at 12th and Lakeside and walk a mile and a half to the gate, and then walk a mile and a half back to my car, and pay anywhere between $10 and $20 to park my car. And then have a 33% increase in my ticket price, which we went through last year, and keep on doing it because, like I said, we're not getting any younger. So I think a lot of those people, those 25 and 30-year people, may just be getting to where I'm getting to. The old knees hurt more than they used to, and, it's just, flat screen TVs are getting better and better, and man, do I have some great high definition in my family room. So, it might just, you don't have to be less a fan. You just maybe sometimes have to, this Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon routine is just not worth the trouble anymore.
No, absolutely. We'll talk more about this next week. We'll talk some draft. We've got the Sweet 16 Elite 8 rounds of the tournament. We'll know what the final 4 teams are when we come out of next week. A lot to do. We'll be 1 week away from spring training. By the way, this has nothing to do with sports, but as I was closing out some windows here, the Plain Dealer, the Cleveland.com site, I don't know why this is at the top of my screen, but this headline came up. I don't know if you saw this or not, but Cleveland Public Power says the consumer has no right to know what you're actually paying for. What's involved in their billing is considered trade secrets. Wow. Nice to know that they feel you don't actually have the right to know what your bill is actually paying for. They just consider it trade secrets.
We're in the age of transparency, Jerry.
Can you believe that your electric bill, they can just send you an amount of money and say, we don't actually have to tell you why we're charging you this. We can just make up an amount and say it's the energy adjustment charge. If you've ever looked at your electric bill and seen it, it's a magic number that They literally just make it up, and they're very discretionary with it. And they were questioned by it and said, "We don't have to tell you anything. It's a trade secret." So that's amazing that we can do that.
It is amazing. Maybe the PUCO will have something to say about that.
Maybe the Browns should use that. Maybe they should say, "Look, we don't have to tell you how we're building our team. This is a trade secret, okay? You buy your tickets and you go enjoy your 8 home games and your 2 overpriced preseason games." And
well, there's no that's one thing that's very transparent about the Cleveland Browns is that, you can say you don't have to tell us the logic that went into your decision, but then every 10 weeks a year we get to see Justin Gilbert on the field. So that's pretty transparent by comparison.
I love it. Dan, you working on anything for EHC this week before you roll?
Yes, I am. I'm putting together something about the Buckeyes in the spring. They're back at it. And by the way, just one last thing before we go. Did you happen to see the NCAA Heavyweight Wrestling Championship?
I was going to ask you about it because that was you had the 88-game winning streak. You had to...
Yeah.
And I watched it.
Defending champion, the kid from NC State, Gwiatkowski.
Yes.
And Kyle Snyder, who's the
from
world
OSU.
champion at 197 pounds. He put on a bunch of weight this year, the Buckeye. And Kyle Snyder gets a takedown with 11 seconds to go in the third period to tie the match.
And had to stall out. He had to stall out the last...
with a takedown.
Yeah.
And that was thrilling. That was great on Saturday night. And Buckeyes had another freshman, Miles Martin, true freshman, only the 15th true freshman to ever win a national title.
I actually saw that on accident. I was watching some of the other ones, and that one came on, and I was like, wow, I was glad I happened to be here because I had seen it off and on throughout the weekend. They had the tournaments
the
going
semifinals,
on and there was some good little ones that I saw. But yeah, that one, and you had the circumstance. MSG was sold out, and the kid even admitted, he's like, I stalled at the end. I was lucky I didn't get called for it, but I knew what I had to do there. And then, but yeah, man, how about it? And then the kid, 3 weeks from now, he'll be doing the Olympic trials, so his season continues.
Right. Yeah, he's a badass. He went into the finals last year as a true freshman at Ohio State, and this was not a heavyweight at 197, and got pinned in the finals. He was the favorite to win it as a true freshman. Got pinned in the finals and just kind of a fluky throw. And got nailed in the finals last year. Came back and won it this year as a true sophomore. But he's a beast, and we'll see him in the Olympics. Kyle Snyder, remember the name.
Absolutely. Go Buckeyes. Dan, you have a good one. Guys, check him out. EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. We'll do the thing next week. We'll talk some Sweet 16 hoops, some Cavs, Browns, Indians, all that stuff, man.
Sounds great, Jerry. Always fun to be with you.
You got it. Great talk today. My man, Dan Wismar. Make sure you're following Dan. As I said, EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. My man Jim Pete puts together a great site over there. Check out Mike Brandenberry, did the try, winlastnight.com. I'm going to get with Mike here, and we'll do a Cleveland Indians spring training preview upcoming in the next 2 weeks. A lot more to do, guys. We're going to get out of here and call it a day. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks to Dan, as always. Bruce gave me the call. Missed a couple of calls earlier. As a matter of fact, let's go to the phone lines here. I believe I had a message left on the take line. We'll give you guys the last word of the day on the fix.
Hey, Big Daddy. How you doing? This is Big Bob from Bristol, Connecticut.
Doing all right,
Big Bob.
Last
night we were getting some snow, but thank God it's all melting and probably will be gone within the hour. But, man, it's Young Indians baseball, and I am getting pretty excited.
Yes, sir.
All right, brother. Try to call you back in a bit. Bye-bye.
Short and sweet. Keep it to the point. Indians baseball. Young Indians. Thanks to Big Bob. You guys can leave your take. It can be quick like Bob. It can be long like Bruce. You can leave it 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. What do you think about the stuff we were talking about today? Discuss it with me all week long. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Twitter @TheSportsFixCLE. And we will see you next Monday live, noon. Same bad time, same bad channel, right here across the Sports Fix Radio Network. We love you, Cleveland and beyond, and we will see you next week, baby, right here on the Sports Fix.
So hopefully we overcome. Yes, I have a dream, and I know I ain't the only one. Modell tried to steal my heart, but we brought it back. Thanks to Cleveland Clinic, now they call them kids the cardiac. Rock cars, Science Center, Tower City, all of that. Warehouse District, Euclid Corridor, and all the flat. You know that I'm a Tribes fan, and I love Slimans. Crockett Park's the perfect place for me to spend some time in. Baby, this is Cleveland. It is so much more to us. You can even go to Severance Hall to see an orchestra. Hey.
We rep our city. Blue lights separate the crime from the gritty. We're sick fitted. Hood class cover any city that we